agenda before the CDBG block grants is we do have a minor site plan review, continued from our last meeting a couple weeks ago from the Congregational Church.
This was sent by email, just in case you didn't print out a copy of it. This was what was
I saw that,
resubmitted by
yeah.
Jay, the architect. And then Paul, you had done.
My
mock-up.
wonderful site survey.
There we go. Fantastic. So please present what you came back, please present what you came back with for the revised site plan.
Se apresentar o plano.
As we were in the last meeting, we are trying to review that site plan for have more parking spots over there. So we brought this plan with we was asking last time, and also the survey for the property. We're showing the parking spot.
Yeah, you can come up, please come up.
We got this afternoon from Jay.
Yeah, I printed one, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Great.
So, Peter, you got one?
Yeah.
If you need extra copies, we had extras here. So.
Okay.
There's a couple of these, and is this
Yes.
that's the plan, the revised plan?
Yeah, the revised one.
Okay. What, did they
Yeah.
see any other comments previously about
That's on my watch.
the driveway?
We received
I'm the
any
representative.
driveway?
Excuse me.
Could you speak a little bit
Counselor.
loud because I can hear.
Sorry. Did you receive any other comments? We received this, so we did receive this plan,
Okay.
and it looks like you got a couple more spaces on there. There's 23. How many was there before? 20?
It's like 19.
19.
I think.
So
I
now
have
it's
one over
23.
here.
Okay.
We were
When it-
talking just a couple
19,
minutes
yep.
ago, maybe you could fit in even more spaces
Yes.
if it were, whether it's coming in from Pratt or coming in from Woodland, if you stacked them, kind of what we were
Right, did you
discussing
show
at
'em
last meeting. Yeah, or around in
Something.
a curve, you know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That was the other thing I thought of. You know,
Right.
you have just like semicircle going
Yeah.
back out. Yeah.
Right.
Do we need more?
No, but there's really no parking in the neighborhood there. So our intent is, last meeting they were telling us it's 60 to 65 members right now thereabouts
Yes,
in your church.
around that.
So our goal was, because it's such a small site, to make sure we can get as much there. And because all the other churches do, like St. Camilla's, St. Anthony's, they do that, line parking because everyone goes at the same time and leaves at the same time. Our hope was to do something like this where, they come in, they all park in a line, so they all stay on that parking lot and don't tax the neighborhood with, parking during church hours. So that was our board's thought.
Right, because in
Yeah,
this configuration here, now you're shortening up the driveway, you have to put curbs in.
Yes.
Along on the sidewalk, and actually, because right now, there's no curb, that's a little sidewalk, and it's just completely open, so you're gonna have to do some asphalt.
Let me get closer because I
Please,
can hear.
please come up, please come up. Sure. So what we were stating at the last meeting, because there's only a curb here, all this is open, so what you're proposing here for parking, you're gonna have to install an asphalt curb all the way along. You see you narrow up, because now you have entered, you're narrowing up your exit, you're making parking, you have to close this off to the sidewalk. Okay, now, we said if it was more like, some type of parking where you, more open, where you say you, either come in this way or come in that way, I think we're
Right.
saying if you came in here and then have all these, like, lines, that people then they could all just leave, so you have all the cars
Right,
facing.
if this was your entrance here, now how much of Pratt is, now it's all open, right?
All
For-
open,
Yeah.
it's
except
all
for the
open.
corner.
It's all open. Now, I mean, if you were to stack vehicles, coming in here, one, right up this way, up against the line here, then they all leave going up this way here. Now, I don't know if you thought about having some kind of a closing that up. If you close that up, it's gonna limit him to how
That's
we
why
gonna
we,
get his cars out.
well, that's why he's doing it here, he basically is kinda
That's
closing
right,
it up.
that's why I don't like,
That's
that's why
why
you
we
need to
said,
stay
well, maybe
open.
try to keep it more open and
See, I-
do a plan that, we try to get more
We
cars,
have Sun-
cars as possible that you
San
can on
San
there,
Anthony's.
without sticking to the traditional
Yeah.
layout, so, what do you think?
San Anthony's has that 7 more parking, it works fine, you know, I mean, it never have a problem.
Yeah, but
do you
he
think?
said, he presented this for us, and he said, well, this is an idea that I have.
Yeah.
But he
They're all
said,
backing
if
up.
if it's necessary, you know, we can adjust,
Sure.
change.
And I think you're gonna get more parking too the other way.
Yeah.
This way is gonna be practical.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's what we're looking for, something like
Yeah.
that. I think you'd be fine with that,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah, I think so. I
You know,
think
it'll
so.
work out fine. It's just that, you know, I think coming in on Woodland and going out on Pratt, stacking the cars up in a circle right up,
Yeah.
I don't think you have any problem at all.
You'll need to make sure, obviously, the first couple weeks you'll have some growing pains. You need to make sure your parishioners don't come off of Pratt, and then you have cars face to face in the
Oh.
aisle. That, you know, that'll
Say,
obviously
right,
cause
'cause
big
we would
problems.
say you at least label and put sign on the
Right.
ground or something
Right,
about
just let
enter
'em know.
here, exit there, and then
Well, last
draw
meeting,
some
you,
lines up.
you mentioned you'll have somebody
Yeah,
there.
yeah, we're gonna,
in the
yeah, we're
morning
gonna
to direct you.
Direct people.
We'll get used to it.
They start parking over there.
Right.
If you get an entrance sign down here and then exit up the top there,
And I'm-
as people will learn.
I'm just not sure which one's gonna be better, this way or this way.
That's gonna
I
be
think
much
if-
more difficult, I think, for people to work with,
Yeah.
this plan.
Yeah, you'll
This
have,
is gonna
you'll have
be
people
much
backing
simpler.
into each
Oh, yeah.
other,
Right.
and
That's gonna be
Yeah.
much easier to work with.
Right, you need to come in off of here, make this your entrance, right here, okay, and you need to get them like this here. Okay, stack them up this way, let them come in and stack up here, okay? Like this here, in, and then as they leave, you know, one by one. They have to just be, you know, get out and be careful when they leave, that's all,
Yeah,
you know?
okay.
But you'll get in all the parking that way.
Yeah, there's no
You
problem.
know, so this would be your out here, and that would be your, just your in here.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, they'll get used to it, they'll start coming in and stacking up their parking. Once you fill these spots here, the only way they can come in is here.
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Because it's gonna be the exit.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, especially,
Once they're stacked up here.
especially if, like you were saying, the, you know, at least the first few weeks to month or whatever, you have someone directing, and you have, you know, fill one aisle at a time, so that this is all blocked off, but with 4 cars, then people can filter in.
Someone comes in this way, you give them the,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
Maybe we can agree that they do meet the minimum requirement
Mm-hmm.
of the 23 spaces, and that they still come back, maybe
Yeah.
they even try the layout that this proposed layout,
Mm-hmm.
we said, of the striped, and then come back with the plan of, yes, this is how we're striping it.
Yeah, I mean,
Or do you want to stripe it?
I mean, the only thing that has to be done is the enter and the exit have to be labeled
Yep.
when they're, you know, when they're first starting, so that people know, and that might even entail, you know, a sign, you know, here or something that's, you know, do not enter entrance, something like that, because you don't want people coming in the wrong way.
Right.
It's not really a problem going out because everyone's going to be there
But-
at the same
But
time.
if he just line here
Yeah.
up to a certain point, as soon as they fill that
Right,
spot,
they're just going to keep going.
it tells them what to do. I mean, it's a no-brainer from there on in, you know? As soon as you get 'em-
Yeah, and I
once
mean,
get
you
'em
could
stacked up here-
you could even have it just like this, you know, as long as these lines aren't too far down, and this aisle's big enough to turn, and have people come in, turn this way, like
Yeah, they
that.
could drive
After a
in.
couple of weeks,
Exactly.
they'll get it.
Drive in and turn.
They'll get it, they'll be fine.
So I mean, I just drew this as a suggestion. We'll kind of, you know, I knew what the board was thinking last meeting.
Right.
It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but it was kind of the idea that, you know,
Yeah, that's somewhat
your
kind of
parking's
like
for a
this.
service. Everyone's going to be getting there about the same time and leaving about the same time. So it'll make sure that everyone's at the service is parking on this site and not in other areas of Clegon. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
And how about the site plan of the funeral parlor?
yeah, I just wanted to see it. I knew, you know, obviously I was at the thing. I had no problems with it, but because we were approving a site plan for the project, that we kind of needed a site plan for the building, so I don't have any problems with it, though.
Yes, Counselor, it's not a hearing, but what?
For the young man. Is he gonna have parking on the premises where the funeral parlor used to be too?
There
I
is,
remember
there
at
are,
one time, when
there
I
are,
was a kid, you could get about 10 cars in there. Is he gonna have that on the premises on his property?
That's what we were just talking about, yeah.
There is some
Across the street.
parking.
I know
There's
he's gonna
some-
have it
there are
across the
some-
street.
There is some minimal parking there, but
There'll be a
most of it's
minimal?
across the
Alright.
street. The handicap parking is at the building,
Oh, the handicap will be here?
Yep.
Okay.
at the facility, as indicated.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's in there,
yep,
The ramp is right here.
right there.
right there.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with that. You know, like you said, you can say in the approval, you know, we agree in principle that at a minimum, the parking's satisfied. However, you know, at some point, once they get a feel for exactly how the parking's gonna show up, just revise this to show us what you think works out of this plan, something like this. Versus something like this where you're gonna, you know, back in or stack in, and that's not gonna work for you.
When do you think you will occupy the space?
It's gonna take around, at least 3 months.
3 months?
At least.
Okay,
Because once we get this approved, we're gonna close in
okay.
1 month.
Mhm.
And after that, we're gonna have, you know, go to the, get the permits and plans and everything.
Sure.
So why
At
don't we,
least 3 months.
so why don't we look at maybe conditionally, like approving this and that within another, I don't know, 3 months after that? So within 6 months to come back with a.
With a revised plan, again, you know what we're looking at now,
Because
right?
right now, you
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
even stripe at the ground because of the conditions and
Yeah.
stuff, so. you
Yeah,
can't do
exactly.
that.
And as soon as the weather clears and, you know, the lots, you know, cleaned up as far as, you know, you get all the sand up and everything else, you know, you're gonna have to, whatever you show on the plan, you're gonna have to stripe those lines so that people know where the aisles are, and like I said, stripe and enter and an exit. And we like it, you could tell, if Jay's gonna draw it again, you can tell him opposite of what he has now. Enter on Woodland,
Enter-
exit on Pratt.
Okay.
Ronaldo, take this as an example.
Yeah, right, you can take that with you, that's something like that,
Sooner-
or like this.
The sooner you get something and get it over, he can let
Take
us.
both of these.
He can throw it out to us and we can look at it and we can make sure you're on the right page
Mm-hmm.
and you can finish something up for us. You know, sooner the better, you know?
I make a motion and we approve this with the condition that we get a revised plan by our May meeting.
Okay, including striping the lot aisles and the enter and exit.
Yep,
Okay.
wonderful. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, okay.
Good luck.
All right,
Good
thank
luck.
you.
luck.
Good luck with your closing.
February 22nd.
There you go.
Good for you.
Thank
All right,
Alrighty.
thank you.
Go get them.
Brought some water. Oops, have a whole opening remarks section now. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming this evening for our CDBG public hearing. The purpose of tonight's public hearing is to gather comments from year 44 Community Development Block Grant applicants who want to speak about their existing programs or changes to their programs. First-time applicants who want to speak about their proposal, and the general public who wish to identify community needs. This year, 23 CDBG proposals were received by the planning board totaling approximately $1,371,299 million in requests. It is estimated that approximately $940,918 in year 44 funds will be available. The schedule for CDBG, the planning board will meet on February 13th to discuss the year 44 proposals. We will then submit our recommendations for funding to Mayor DiNatale. The mayor will review our funding recommendations and submit his recommendations to the city council. The city council will in turn review CDBG recommendations beginning on March 6th and will vote on it on March 20th. The proposed consolidated plan and statement of CDBG activities will be published on March 31st. Public comments will be received up to the date of the second public hearing, which is scheduled for May 1st. We anticipate local approval of the year 44 consolidated plan and CDBG action plan in May, at which time the city's year 44 application will be submitted to HUD for approval. The program year officially begins on July 1st, 2018. And I'll say, I'm gonna massacre Tom's name here. Tom,
You can do it.
I know. Zarowski. I know, I always just call him
That's
Tom.
perfect.
It's Executive Director of the Community Development Department will now say a few words about CDBG regulations. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Paula. And before I get started, I just want to say an important thank you to Migdalia Velez, the director at Fitchburg's Family Resource Center, who's providing certified interpretation support for this evening. Si necesita una traducción en español, por favor, contacte Miggy. In addition to the summary of Year 44 proposals, there's a handout on the green sheets that you all have regarding eligible activities and national objectives. Eligible activities cover a wide range of services: public facility improvements, public services, capped at 15%, demolition, economic development, rehab and preservation, and planning and admin, which is capped at 20%. Besides meeting the eligibility criteria, the proposed activity must address one of the three national objectives. An activity must A, benefit persons of low and moderate incomes, or B, aid in the prevention or elimination of slums and blight, or C, meet other community development needs which have a particular urgency because existing conditions pose a serious and immediate threat to the health or welfare of the community where other financial resources are not available to meet such needs. As an entitlement city, under the CDBG program, it's our responsibility to ensure and to document that at least 70% of block grant funds are used to benefit low and moderate income persons over a 3-year period, 2015, 2016, 2017. Low to moderate income is defined as earning 80% or less of the median income, and or an activity is located in a census tract where at least 51% of the beneficiaries are of low to moderate income, and all the residents within the given area will benefit from the activity. Records regarding income limits as well as local policies and procedures of the CDBG program are available at the Community Development Department Monday through Friday in English and Spanish upon request. As Paula Karen stated, we welcome comments on specific proposals as well as an overall housing and community development needs within Fitchburg and all other HUD-funded initiatives. Forms are available right back there tonight. In English and Spanish if anyone would like to fill out a public comment form or notice of intent. This information is included in the consolidated plan as well as CDBG projects. I'll now turn the meeting back over to Paula.
Thank you, Tom. Please remember to sign in, and the attendance sheet is on the counter as you walk in as well. At this time, I would like to open the meeting for public comments. If anyone did not receive a summary of the Year 44 proposals, we have more summaries available at the counter. We would ask that you please limit your comments to under 5 minutes so everyone has a chance to speak. If you need to talk with another applicant during the public hearing, please do so in the hallway. It is difficult to hear the person speaking when other conversations are taking place. To say, Migdalia Velez, the program director of the Mock Family Resource Center, will provide Spanish interpretation services. Ms. Velez is certified to provide this service, and we thank her for her assistance tonight. Please let me know if anyone needs this assistance. Our first category for the evening is public facilities and improvements. And in light of someone needs some additional time for another meeting, we're gonna see item B first, which is the Goodrich project, playground project, presented by the Board of Parks Commissioners. Requested amount of $60,000. Last year, award amount was $71,540, and the funds will be used to remove existing fencing around the upper athletic fields at Goodrich Playground and the demolition of the long deteriorating tennis courts. It will be followed by leveling and installation of loam within the confines of the old tennis courts and outfield for use as multi-purpose field, and the installation of new fencing and backstops in the old baseball field, as well as claying of the infield. Work will be performed by DPW and will be ADA compliant.
Good evening, planning board members, councilors. For the record, my name is AJ Tarigny, Chief of Staff to Mayor DiNatale. This evening, I'm representing Nate LaRose and the Parks Board. Nate had to run out to go host his Biddy League basketball game. So, essentially, last year, you guys appropriated funds, the City Council, and with your recommendation, of course, to Coolidge Park, which was used for the fencing and removal of that fencing and replacement thereof. And they'll be wrapping that up in the springtime. The weather beat them to it. So this year, the Parks Board is focusing on Goodrich Park. I can certainly speak to this park. We've received, Joan and I received several calls during the springtime that park needs some attention with added loam and fill as it kind of washes away over the time. So this particular $60,000, as Paul had mentioned, goes towards the demolition to the deteriorating tennis courts, and then brings in earth and loam and fill to use a multi-purpose field for various sports for the kids to play on. And of course, this work will be done by our great DPW department. And other than that, I don't have much of the major specifics. And of course, Nate LaRose is always there to pick up the phone if you have anything. But I can certainly entertain any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Does the board have any questions on this application? Okay. Does the public, anybody from the general public have any questions regarding this proposal this time? Okay.
That's it. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, AJ.
The next item, we have sidewalk accessibility improvements sponsored by the City of Fitchburg Disability Commission. Requested amount of $20,000. Last year, award amount of $5,110. Funds will be used to bring city sidewalks into compliance with ADA requirements. The project involves adding, improving crosswalks, removal of curbs that are obstructing universal access along Water Street, including Water Street at Spruce Street, 350 Water near Fitchburg Green, Water at Boyle Court, and Water at 5th Street. Also the Senior Center, Wallace Ave, Elm Street, Grove Street. Approximately 20 architectural barriers will be removed and work will be performed by DPW to ADA standards. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeff Wolfgang, and I'm the chairperson of the Fitchburg Disability Commission. And I believe this right now is year 7 coming back. And in all of those years, we've been able to do some really nice things with the city, and we'd like to continue with the positive momentum that we have going forward. And with this, the intersections that we have chosen, once again, we're going to be working in conjunction with DPW. And just to give you an idea of the cost savings that's going to be so that we can do more with less. Doing an average intersection as of 5 years ago was just a little bit under $5,000. And with this, for most years, we've been able to get 10 intersections done for a relatively inexpensive amount, usually averaging somewhere around $1,000. So using DPW, we keep all of that money in Fitchburg, which I think is a great thing. This year, I'd like to specifically just focus on one of the intersections that we're doing. I guess as you've heard me talk about for the past 6 or 7 years, it's just the horror that I see when I see a person in a wheelchair or a person pushing a baby stroller having to get off of the sidewalk because it's cracked or there's an obstruction in the way, and just watching them go down the street with oncoming traffic coming towards them. And if you go downtown, it's something that you're going to see almost on a daily basis. And if you spend any time particularly around some of the high-rise buildings down there where we do have a lot of people that have mobility impairments, it's something that's a very common sight and that scares me. I don't know if you know this, but as far as going to the senior center, if you take MART transportation over, with the way that it is, because you can only get out of the MART transportation with a wheelchair on the right-hand side, that if you pull up to the front to go into the senior center, which is probably the most used place in the entire city, as far as that goes for people with disabilities, you have to get off in the middle of the road. The only way that you can get over there is to completely go behind the building and over by where the bank is and cross over that way. And in a city like Fitchburg in the year 2018, that's ridiculous. And so this is something that's very important to us. We've always tried to go with key intersections such that if the Justice Department ever did come in and do an audit, we can at least say that we're making an attempt to try and do something. This year we're asking for $20,000. We've had less money in the past, and just really kind of hoping this year, that it's something where we can get the full amount so that we can do everything that needs to be done. Because we finally gotten it to the point with DPW where we're just about 100% caught up with all of the projects that I have. I think there's only 3 or 4 left that we need to do, when in past years when we've come You know, it's been numbers more like 8 or 9, so probably early this year we'll be able to get all of that taken care of in addition to being able to do everything else. And so with that, if you can find it in your hearts to do that with the $20,000, you know, well, I guess the way that I look at it is one of these days I'm going to be that senior citizen that's going to want to go to the senior center, and I really don't want to get run over. So, yeah, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Does the board have any questions, any members this time? Anybody, public, yes, have any questions? Make a comment?
To Jeff, through you. Hi, Jeff. I'm Ward 1 Counselor Amy Green, so Water Street is my ward.
Okay.
And I'm wondering specifically at Fitchburg Green Housing, are you addressing only one side of the sidewalk issues, or does this project, if the $20,000 is awarded, will you be able to address both sides of the sidewalk on Water Street heading down from Fitchburg Green to Market Basket Plaza?
I'm not 100% sure I can get you the answer to that question, because right now with all of those plans, it's something that Lenny has.
Okay.
And so it would just be a matter of me following up with them, and I don't want to give you erroneous information one way or the other, but I'd be happy to do that, and if you give me email, I can email
Okay.
it to you tomorrow.
Thank you. Only because I know that we've got some other projects going on in that, and I hate redos. So I just assume if we're gonna get it done and done right the first time, that's how I would like it to proceed.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, Mr. Boucher?
I just want to point out to the Disability Commission that there's more than downtown area in the city of Fitchburg, that I represent a vast majority of elderly people in the city of Fitchburg, and that happens to be the Clegon area, Ward 2A and 2B. And my sidewalks are deplorable.
Counselor Boishman?
And you can't even
This is
get, I'm
just
sorry.
comment- it's
and you
commenting-
can't
just
get-
commenting on the
And you can't even get
application.
wheelchairs on them, and there are people with wheelchairs and crutches. And the elderly, I said this last year and I'll say it again, they told me to tell the planning board, they are not dead yet. And they want to get out, enjoy the sunshine and walk around the neighborhood. And they can't do it because the sidewalks, you can't walk on them.
Would say, your opinion, this application would have some merit?
Well, yes, I'm just saying it does have merit, and I just want to know that Clegon's is part of Fitchburg, and every time I look at this, it's always the downtown area, and nothing's going up my wonderful way, up in Ward 2A and 2B. And I'd like to see something go up that way.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I briefly answer that?
Certainly.
Yeah. Fantastic. I would love to sit down and talk with you about it and see if we can't put together something as far as that goes for next year. Our meetings are held on the second Wednesday of the month at 10 o'clock at the library. But in addition to that, I'd be happy to sit down and talk with you with that and see if there isn't something that we can't put together with that, because I agree, it's when we put out feelers to try and get intersections that come in, you know, we don't always hear from all parts of the city. And so if it's something that we can address like that, that would make my day.
You told the wrong guy.
Yes.
Are you estimating approximately $1,000 per intersection with the DPW work? Is that what you were saying?
Well, once again, that's going on what he's done in past years. Usually it comes in at around 1,500 to 1,600. And so, but as far as that goes with what's going to be done over at the senior center, that's probably going to be more on the expensive side. You know, that's definitely not going to be $1,000 fix.
So what are your priorities if you don't get the full funding? What are your priorities on this list?
Well, it's just to get as many of the projects done as we can. And with that, that's something we've also addressed with the mayor, of trying to get the entire part of that downtown to be 100% handicap compliant, but that's something that's, I don't know, well, personally, that's my personal dream that I hope at some point in time with my work here in the city that I'm able to achieve, but, you know, it's something that the Disability Commission is consciously thinking about, and it's on our radar, but,
The downtown.
yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Jeff, it's not 100% clear to me what kind of work needs to be done at the senior center in order
Okay.
to make that front door handicap accessible. What is the extent of the work?
There's
So
going,
that vehicle can go down that street.
well, I think what they're going to do is they're going to try and do the drop-off area, if you were going down towards the courthouse, to be the left after the senior center. And doing that, there's going to be some work on the curbs. Basically, all of the curbs right now that are around the senior center are in horrible condition, if you ever go down there. And so it's a matter of bringing those into compliance. There's a couple of parking spaces there that are going to need to be changed over, and
Eliminated?
yeah, either eliminated or turned into handicap parking. It's one of the two.
Okay. Thank you. Any further question on this application? Comments? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr.
Okay,
Wolfgang.
thank you.
Thank you for your continued efforts.
Well, thank you, appreciate it. Thank you for listening to me.
The next proposal under public facilities and improvements is the Crocker Field Grandstand Wall Restoration, sponsored by the City of Fitchburg School Department in the amount of $8,000. Last year award was $25,000. Funds will be used to remove and replace 3 sections of wall. Each section 43 inches high by 30 feet long, located at the front row seats in sections 10, 11, and 12 of the open grandstands.
Hi, I'm Rick Kazanjian. I'm currently the president of the Crocker Field Restoration Committee, and I'm representing the school department and the CFRC tonight to plead for funds. We've done a lot of work at Crocker Field over the years with a minimum amount of money, and the CDBG has been very good to us over the years and helped us do a lot of things to help keep this historical site, get it back to its original condition as best we can. The $8,000 we've asked for will be hopefully matched by the school department. They've committed to matching it for us to help us rebuild these 3 sections of wall on the open grandstands, which is the part in front of the press box. Last year, CDBG gave us $25,000 to use for the remediation of lead paint and repainting of the structural steel in the covered grandstands to help preserve that steel so it will last a long time. And I was hoping that somebody else was going to sit here tonight, but they were unable to make it, so I offered to come up, and I'm willing to answer any questions that anybody may have on
Well, you're
this
doing
subject.
well. Any questions from the board at this time?
Just, how are we doing as far as future at Crocker Field as far as repairs and stuff? You know, is there still a lot to be done there?
There is a lot to be done. There's a significant amount of work that needs to be done on the field house. Locker room specifically really need to be rebuilt. We finally got the concession stand back this year after 2 years of hell for me personally, because I run the concession stand for the high school band. So I was tired of hauling things back and forth. So we finally got the concession stand back, thanks to Mayor DiNatale and his pressure on the insurance company and everybody else involved to get that finally up and running. Crocker Field Restoration Committee has had very limited success in raising funds. We're constantly trying to figure out what can we do to help raise money to continue to do the things that we want to do for Crocker Field. I'm sure everybody's aware that we had a problem with the lighting this year. The lighting at the first game against St. Bernard's threatened to actually cancel the game until the fire department came to our rescue with a lighting truck. That's a $300,000 project to replace the lights and the stands at Crocker Field. We started a GoFundMe account to raise funds to do that. Funds are coming in slowly. Hopefully, the city will be able to find some money for us to help us do that. Again, we're able to, as a committee, we're able to take on a lot of these small projects, try to do a little bit at a time to improve the facility as best we can. The structural issue with these 3 parts of grandstand are actually a safety hazard for the children and the people that use the facility. They're in danger of falling down, and we'd certainly hate to see that happen while anybody is at Crocker Field. Crocker Field gets a lot of use. Walkers during the daytime, football games and football Fridays and other athletic events in the fall. A lot of people use Crocker Field, and we're looking to strengthen these areas to, for the inherent safety of the people that are using the field.
I just know the longer we put things off, the worse things get, so.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're working with as a sidelight. We had an artist come to us in January that made a presentation. His son used to play football for Wachusett, and he has come to us and offered to do 2 original paintings of Thanksgiving Day at Crocker Field. Those are going to be one of them, and maybe another one on the field house itself. He's going to get us lithographic copies that we're going to be able to sell, try to raise some funds. He's going to donate the 2 original paintings that we're hopefully going to be able to auction off. And this isn't just any run-of-the-mill painter. He's a nationwide known sports artist that has worked with many of the historical stadiums throughout the country and with teams to paint for them. He's the official sports illustrator and painter of the Boston Red Sox, amongst other teams. So,
Wonderful. Good.
Thank you.
Well, good luck.
Any questions, comments?
My question is, what specifically is the Crocker Foundation or the Friends of Crocker Field, what is their contingency plan on raising funds for this facility?
right now, we don't, well, as I said, we're gonna try to raise money with these paintings, hopefully this year. We've got some funds in reserve now that we have in our account. If we have to, we could maybe dip into some of those. We're gonna get some matching funds from the school department. If we can't get the funding from CDBG, we're gonna ask the school department if they can somehow find any additional funds for us to help take care of this issue.
Because, I mean, ultimately, it is the school department.
It's school department property, which is why the school department has submitted the request. As the Crockerville Restoration Committee, we're just facilitating the work.
I was just making it clear for the audience. I mean, you guys have been in front of us every year for as long as I've been doing this. Just out of curiosity, just a quick summary. I know you want to get to that, but just a very quick summary. Do you have a ballpark, because I know the number's pretty big, of how much you guys have already spent, grant-wise and fundraising-wise?
Ooh, I'm going to say it's in excess of 1.3 million over the years.
And you have a needs study. I know. I remember.
Yeah, we had a master plan drawn up, a professional needs study, and everything else done.
Do you remember the total amount, roughly, what you think it is?
I want to say we're still looking at 2 to 2.5 million.
Okay.
That includes, doing the field turf and then, redoing the field house itself. And now we've got this $300,000 light, which I think has pushed that even higher.
I know we've been chipping away slowly, trying to make sure that, the school department not having the funds, trying to aid them via CDBG, because the last thing.
We're actually hoping that, the next bonding round, we'll be able to maybe get something.
Good.
And maybe included in school building needs, so we can get some reimbursement too from the state.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just as a point of procedure, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm just gonna kindly ask that the city councilor sitting at the table would actually just take seats in the audience, since there is actually a quorum, so not to be seen as a deliberative body in this case, at this hearing. If you would.
Apologies.
I know, my apologies.
No, that was me.
Oh, your apologies too.
I was asked that.
I was
It
gonna
was
make
asked that at the time. I
apologies, too,
apologize.
for that. Oh, about where to sit.
About where they could sit,
About
yeah.
where to sit.
What's that?
There's not a quorum here at the council.
Of everyone. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, Mike was just here 2 seconds ago. I don't know.
AJ's gonna answer.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your cooperation. We do have, our next proposal is sponsored by the Community Development Office For streetscape improvements, the amount of $60,000. Award last year was $51,100. Funds will be used to design, install, or replace sidewalks, curb cuts, fencing, lighting, plantings, or other streetscape or accessibility improvements along city gateways, north of Main, or other strategic locations. Funds may support or be used as a match for other funding under the city's Complete Streets program, or be used to comply and provide design or match for the next round of MassWorks Public Infrastructure Grant Program.
So.
Good evening.
Good evening again. I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory what you just read there,
Okay.
but I do think it's important to underscore that last point in particular. As we're applying for Complete Streets funding, which now, as you guys know, is a Complete Streets community, we're eligible for $400,000 of funding every year. It needs to be matched with funding, including the design work for that. In addition to the MassWorks, our next grant application that we hope to make there will need funding for the design of that as well. So it's important to have that match aside from the work that we hope to do with actual streetscape improvements throughout these areas.
Is this money that's requested to be consolidated with the money from last year to, like, in order to make a larger application for a project? Or is it just specifically, you know, for applying for the grant?
Specifically for the new year 44. So with year 43, we'll have certainly Complete Streets funding and other work with DPW that will be above and beyond what we see here.
Okay.
And these are as needed, meaning you don't have a specific location planned?
Well, for Complete Streets funding, so we can take the year 43 for example this year, we haven't gotten word yet from the state if we have received that $400,000. It's not a given that we basically submitted our prioritization plan, and once we hear word from the state, then we contract with designers to do the necessary work for what we prioritized. In that case, the bulk of it being the area around the Upper Common. So it's kept flexible for that purpose because, you know, that's really the most important component is fitting into those matches for those grant fundings. But above and beyond that, then they would go into priority projects within the CDBG strategic area.
What's the difference between what you're asking for and the work you want done in Mr. Wolfgang and his sidewalk work? It seems like his work is very important. I mean, especially when you have the seniors out on, you know, trying to walk these streets. It seems like he needs to get some important things done, and just seems like the two of you may possibly work together on something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I don't think they're by any means mutually exclusive. I echo his concerns, being at the senior center quite a bit, particularly in the wintertime. And I think if you go down any streets in the downtown area in particular during the winter, it's disheartening to see people traveling on the streets because they can't on the sidewalk. So I think any improvements we'd hope to do, and some of them, the actual physical improvements would be done into ADA compliance. But then I guess how this does differ in some respect, going above and beyond, we do have that need for design matching grants for different grants that we apply for from the state.
Good.
And that can be pretty hefty sum.
In the priority list that you were talking about with complete streets, how, complicated question, how extensive is that? Meaning, is it specifically like Upper Common 1, you know, north of Maine or whatever, specific areas?
Yeah, it's specific areas that was developed through a public process over the last year. And
We might have gotten it at some point, but I don't remember. Can you just email that to us?
be happy to.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, the main project was the area around the Upper Common, but there's a series of other projects throughout, both downtown and, you know, there's some on South Street, some on Water Street.
Well, I asked because, you know, like we were talking about, you know, John was just talking about the Disability Commission, you know, Water Street in particular. Water Street seems like from all the conversations we've had is one of the next gateways that's going to be done. So if they're going to be doing sidewalks, like Councilor Green said, if they're going to be doing sidewalks, let's, you know, coordinate it with whether that be Complete Streets or the Gateway Improvement Project or whatever it is,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and I mean, I think certainly I'd have to just sort of crosswalk the two and see if there are any linkages between what's there today, and hopefully if we get that funding, we would know before an actual allocation would be made. Too.
Perfect.
Thank you. Any comment or question? Yeah,
Mike?
Mike?
The $60,000, there's no specific plan for exactly where that's gonna go. You were talking about the upper common. You won't be putting any plantings up there, I suppose, because there are boxes there. But the sidewalks, where there are bricks, are in poor shape. Are you gonna replace those with
Yeah.
more bricks, or?
So just to be clear, I'm referring to Complete Streets as an example for what we're hoping to do with year 43 funding, if the state approves our Complete Streets allocation request. So in that case, yeah, I mean, the whole idea of Complete Streets is to create streets that aren't just for the automobile, they're for the pedestrian, they're for the bicycle. So I think that's a prime example of if there's a sidewalk within the area that we're strategically working on that is not walkable, it's something we'd hope to address. In terms of what would be the material we'd use, I guess it would be context determined and determined with the help of our engineers.
Have they looked at the brick sidewalks in the upper common?
I'd assume so.
There's a lot of bricks missing. Yeah.
Any further comment on this proposal this time? Okay. Thank you very much. Still under public facilities and improvements, we have a project handicap accessibility improvement sponsored by the Fitchburg Historical Society. Requested amount of $4,474. Last year award amount not previously awarded. Funds will be used to address obstacles to ADA accessibility, handicapped elevator improvements and elevator control room, new exterior lighting at handicap parking entrance, newly painted symbols and lines on handicap parking spaces, and new track lighting fixtures for brighter light and public exhibition and program area. Work will be ADA compliant. Good evening.
Hi. Yes, I'm Susan Navarre. I'm the Executive Director at the Fitchburg Historical Society, and I'm here to ask for your support for this money. The Fitchburg Historical Society is a neighborhood facility that's free to all in Fitchburg. We serve many of Fitchburg's students, people of all ages, people of low and moderate income in addition to everybody else. And of course, we especially have a large number of seniors who come and attend. We are ADA accessible. We're located in the Phoenix Building at 781 Main Street, facing the Upper Common, which we renovated at great cost and added an elevator to create accessibility and other changes to make it function as a modern building, but also make it accessible. And one of the things that we've seen is that in the years since doing that and moving in, we've had volunteers who are confined to wheelchairs, but that are able to come and volunteer with us. And we've had tours sometimes that are entirely in a wheelchair. So it's an extraordinary amount of accessibility for historic programs and exhibitions compared to many other historic buildings. And what we're hoping to do here is to improve the accessibility. Currently, the back parking lot, when it gets dark out, is not bright enough for real safety and accessibility, and we'd like to add those lights. The elevators don't work as well as they could because of the cold of the building. You may know that you have to heat the room that an elevator is in, and we've had that heater going constantly since we opened, essentially, or constantly all winter. And so it now needs to be replaced. But we'd also like to put in a more energy efficient heater actually in the hydraulic fluid, which is a great way to save some money and actually improve the elevator's function. And as I get older, I see that I need a lot more light to see things, and I've certainly heard that from our visitors too, that the program areas and the exhibition areas are lighted with track lighting, and in some cases the lighting isn't really strong enough for perfect safety and for perfect accessibility to all of the exhibitions and programs that we put on. I think that's everything. And the signage in the parking lot, we have a sign, but the painting is getting harder and harder to see, and we want to make sure that nobody uses the handicap space except those who are supposed to use it. So that's pretty much all.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? No? Comments from the public at this time on this application? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The last project underneath this title is handicap accessibility renovation, sponsored by Centro. Year 44 requested amount of $21,325, none awarded last year. Funds will be used to address obstacles to ADA accessibility at recently purchased building at One Wood Place, which will host clients from DCF Family Stabilization Program and IDCF Intensive Foster Care Program. Work would include making a small first-floor bathroom and kitchen into one large handicap-accessible bathroom, as well as installing a handicap ramp to enable wheelchairs and other walker support devices to enter at the front of the building. Work will be ADA compliant.
Hi.
Good
Good evening. My name is Roberto Diaz. I'm the Director of Institutional Advancement at Centro, formerly known as Centro Las Americas. I'm joined by Eileen Berger, who's our grant writer. And Centro is a multicultural, multilingual human service agency that provides a multitude of services, originally out of Worcester. We've been around for 40 years. 7 of those we've been in Fitchburg at a rented space on 437 Main Street. Over the last 3 years, we've seen a significant increase in need for us to provide more services in this city and want to increase our footprint. And so we've purchased One Wood Place, who's been, kind of vacant for a while. And so we had a ribbon cutting this morning, and here we are trying to already improve our building. And so we're excited by that. And so we will warehouse, basically, it's going to be administrative and training facility. So we're not going to see a whole lot of folks going in there. However, we still need to be ADA accessible and want to make sure that we have that accessibility for staff and other people that we might train. The main program that we will warehouse out of there is the intensive foster care, which we've been improved by. And so not many places in the Commonwealth offer that in Spanish. And so we're very excited to have joined that, being able to give that service to people who speak Spanish. And so we're excited by that. And so this will allow us to kind of do that, provide the training for people, and then have other services through the DCF program, which are clinical in nature. They're mostly home-based. And so a lot of our staff will be in there, utilizing the space, and then going off into the North County to provide services in-home to people. And so we're hoping to get over $21,000 to make that happen, and hopefully you guys can support us. And if you have any questions.
Are you familiar with intensive foster care?
I am not personally, no.
Okay.
I mean, I've done
It's,
foster care, but
It's
not
for
intensive.
children who have special needs and cannot live with their families, but they're unlike normal foster children. So we have to train them. They have to be the parents who want to have these children have to be specially trained. So a lot of what we'll be doing with that building is having meetings with parents and families who are interested in having a special child in their home and interested in going through the training. And so I understand we're going to do the training there too.
Yes.
So and as we say, our staff, I'd say, are about 95% bilingual. So for 40 years, people have been coming to our organization because they spoke Spanish and they didn't have anywhere else to go. So with the increase in Spanish immigrants, we've become a very busy and big place, and we've taken on more than just food pantries and basic help, which is where we started out, and have gone into behavioral health problems and things like that, because our staff can understand. So we're excited about it expanding in Fitchburg, and so we purchased this time a building to do so.
You purchased the whole building?
We purchased the whole building.
I'm looking at it now.
You're looking at it now, yeah?
And I didn't know exactly where it was.
Right behind the old Bank of America that's closed, yep.
Yeah, it's a good-sized building.
It is, beautiful, a lot of wood insides, so we're very excited by it. It's a nice space.
How many employees are?
Start with like 10 to 15 or so. It's a swing space, so it depends on the cases that we get from DCF. So if we get 15 cases directly in Fitchburg or the Twin Cities or something, then we'll have more staff there. It just depends on workload and caseload, but, yep.
And how many do you expect to, in the years that you've been here, that you've averaged serviced?
So through our Family Support Center, which predominantly serves people with developmental disabilities, which is on Main Street, we normally get 100 to 150 people. That's just DDS folks. But then we have drop-in people, people that say, I need support with DTA, I need support. So we'll say, okay, this is where you can go, and so to provide that kind of services. So it might be 200 people a year.
Okay.
So.
Right. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the board?
No, good, I'm good.
Okay, any questions, comments on this application? Proposal at this time?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your efforts.
Appreciate it.
And
All
that's- and the reason why I looked at that is the caps. We don't have Larry anymore to go through this, but Tom, where's Tom? Oh, that's fine. It doesn't matter. I'll get him later. There's caps. Public facilities does not have a cap, right?
No, none of it. Right, I know
Just-
there's other two categories for those.
Right. I know public services does. I'm just clarifying.
Right, thank you.
Perfect. It's just public services 15% and planning and admin. Okay.
20%. Our next segment is public service requests. First project is Street Homeless Intervention Program sponsored by Our Father's House with a requested amount of $28,000. Last year, award amount of $24,500 would be used to pay staff salary for a 20-hour per week street outreach worker solely dedicated to the homeless within the city of Fitchburg. Connections to health and social services, mental health and addiction services will be offered along with food, clothing, blankets, and human contact. We'll work with Fitchburg PD and FD Fire Department. In addition, $8,000 will be available to pay for a chronically homeless person's first month's rent only or one-time payment in order to establish individuals to acquire and live in permanent housing and off the streets. Good evening.
Kevin from Our Father's House. This is the second year we've come before you for this money. What we learned over the last year was, although it says we're looking to support a 20-hour-a-week street outreach person, it actually makes us available to the city of Fitchburg 168 hours a week. Most of the calls I get from Fitchburg in particular, and other, are all after 5 o'clock at night and on weekends. I was just, while I was sitting there scrolling through some of my call history logs from Fitchburg Police, Fitchburg Mayor. A lot of them are on weekends. Many of them are after midnight. So that 20 hours is
Baseline.
absolutely dedicated to Fitchburg, but makes us available 168 hours a week, by phone, by text, in person. As you'll see in the proposal, we do cover many other communities, but that we are based in Fitchburg, so it makes us dedicated specifically for Fitchburg.
How did that, I guess, how did it, the previous funds for last year? I mean, obviously, you've spent a lot,
Yeah,
more than the 20 hours, more than a 20
well,
hours a week.
it helped
so
us,
there's certainly,
we built a little different relationship with Fitchburg PD, and they gave us an officer, almost a homeless liaison, to work with us on a regular basis. Many situations our street outreach workers go into can't be done alone, needs to be done with somebody else. Oftentimes that is a uniformed officer or a plainclothes officer, just depending on what the need is. Fitchburg PD, Fire Department, the same thing. We've had a couple of service calls where they've provided EMS professionals to go with us because of certain situations where in years past we would have handled those on our own and only then called in the immediate need. Now we're integrating more upfront people to assess those situations and not wait until it's an emergency situation. So it's actually because of that relationship we've now had. We've always had a casual relationship. Now it's more official, and it's helped us quite a bit. I think it's helped all of us.
Great.
The additional $8,000 that we're asking for, that's kind of a new thing. Helping people get over that hump of coming up with the first month's rent or paying a past utility bill is huge. Many of our clientele, that's what keeps them homeless, is coming up with that funding. that money would be dedicated for Fitchburg residents, not for someone coming from Lowell just to move into Fitchburg to take advantage of that funding. That would be for documented Fitchburg homeless.
Is that 8,000 part of the requested amount on the 28? Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions? Yes. Okay. Any comments on this application? Yes, Counselor? Yes. Motion.
I only have one request. I'm asking the people when they go up there and speak, if they can speak up louder, because basically you can't hear people talk here. And I'm supposed to be making a decision on different things when it comes to my turn to vote on it. And if I can't hear them, I can't hear them.
Well, I mean, you could come a little bit closer as well. We can try, I mean, we can just try to project as best we can. Yes, Counselor?
I just want to say, the last 3 years of my police career, I walked Lower Main Street. This is probably one of the most important programs I've ever seen come to the city. And in the last few years, they've done just a fantastic job, and I think we should support this wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Your comment? Yes. Oh, good. Chief.
I'd just like to speak on behalf of the Fitchburg Police Department. For the record, Ernie Hammond, Chief of Police. Last year was the first year that this program came in front of CDBG, and I'd just like to report this past year has been a phenomenal success. We've been doing outreach with Kevin and his group. We've been going out, trying to provide services at night, at some of the most inclement weather times that we've seen in this past winter. So I can say from our perspective, working with Kevin this past year has been phenomenal, and I hope you would support his efforts again.
Thank you very much. Anyone further this evening? All right. Thank you, Kevin. The next project is Building Empowered Youth and Families, sponsored by Mock as Management Company of United Neighbors of Fitchburg, in the amount of $53,000. Last year, award amount was $44,968. Funds will be used to provide information and referral food pantry and bilingual services to United Neighbors of Fitchburg facility. Youth programs will be offered, including after-school programs for teens and kids and teen nights, incorporating homework help, recreation, exercise programs, leadership and development, and civic engagement, and partially paid for staff salaries for program director, after-school coordinator, program assistant, and other administrative support.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Leona Early. I'm the Vice President of Community Programs at Montechusett Opportunity Council. And basically, just to add to what you just shared, just basically adding that Mock as the management company of United Neighbors of Fitchburg is proposing funding to support the continuation of programs determined to be essential to the Claygon neighborhood. And Mock's role is to ensure the most isolated and vulnerable families of our community are able to access critical services. Again, we hope to serve 100+ unduplicated families, children and families in that neighborhood. And we've been with the United Neighbors of Fitchburg for 9 months now, with interrupted services.
I was wondering, because I realized the structure had changed since last year, how the facility was still faring, the enterprise.
Not much has changed as far as so much just, well, the infrastructure, but as far as the service delivery,
yes,
we're able to continue without, again, interruption, the after-school program, the food pantry, and INR information and referral services. And we're able to offer, we're not running a, if you would, ESL class, but we have bilingual services, and all of our staff currently are bilingual staff.
And I don't know if you know this might be better directed at Tom or planning, community development, I mean. Do we know last year, the year 43, are there any reprogrammed funds, or were there any hiccups with the closing of the neighborhood center? And, I mean, there must have been some issue with HUD with that temporary.
So, I don't know about hiccups, but I think that, there was a process, between when the initial allocation came in July 1st of year 43 and Mock taking over in between, and there was a somewhat of, I guess you would say, a lapse in service, but beyond that, I mean, I think the ultimate goals and intended outcomes of the program remain.
No, all I was asking was, generally speaking, because like you said, there's lapse in service. There must be some of that fund from last year that's going to be reprogrammed into this year.
I think that's often the case with any
Yeah.
any programs that we see here. So that is probably a question best asked by, around the end of June.
Okay.
And we can then consider that.
Okay.
Yes, please, just.
May I speak? Josiah Richards. I was on the board of directors for UNF up until recently. My term expired. I was on the board for about 4 or 5 years. I just want to say briefly, UNF never closed. It's still a 501c3. It's still open for business. We just had a fiscal crisis come up this past year and had to seriously cut our services down. But one of the critical aspects that UNF provided was the after-school youth program, and Mock very graciously stepped in, thank you, to help us keep that program going. So I know a lot of people think the center's closed. It's not, but it really did have to shrink down to its core mission, and that is families and children. So from what I understand, we do have an operating food pantry. You can correct me if I'm wrong. The after-school program, we don't have classes anymore, but we do provide some Spanish language interpretation, and we're hoping to grow in the future. But we just really needed to go back to our roots, our core mission, and that was family and children. So thank you to Mock for the last 9 months. I feels longer than that now, but for really stepping up and help manage the personnel. But we still have a small staff of UNF employees. May have gotten a little smaller since the last time I was on the board meeting, but I just wanted to throw that in. Thank you.
Thank you. I know, I missed the children this evening. Usually there's like,
Sorry?
nice
It's
as
usually a parade of, of people speaking, and it's always a highlight of the CDBG meeting.
We do have enrolled 50 families right now, and from day to day, we have 35 to 40 children who attend daily
Excellent.
to the center. And on the president's behalf, he was going to meet me here tonight, Hank Parkinson, but it's okay. I'm there, and I can speak confidently about the services that are currently going on.
Thank you. Yes, Counselor.
Karina, I appreciate the work your Mock is doing through UNF. My question is, what's the plan moving forward, especially with staffing, program directors, after-school coordinator, assistants, admin? What's the plan of UNF moving forward to self-fund those own positions, so they're not taking resources away from Mock, or that Mock isn't putting the bill for those particular positions? So, again, the president is not here. We do have an agreement with the Claygon, United Neighbors of Fitchburg, and we're very, what's the word I want to say, sustainable at this time to run the programs very well and sustainable through that contract. And right now we are there through the year. And we do have our staff on board, and there's still two Claygon, United Neighbors of Fitchburg, staff on board. Not sure if folks can hear me.
Okay.
But we are very confident, and again, the program's very sustainable, and the community needs are being met.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The next proposal under Public Services is the Spartacus Program, sponsored by Montezut Regional YMCA. The amount of $10,000. Last year, award amount was $8,176. Funds will be used to support staff salary of the Teen Center Spartacus Program, offering services to at-risk youth between the ages of 13 and 18 who live in Fitchburg. Emphasis will be on youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility through physical fitness, team building, life skills training, and outdoor activities. It is estimated 60 youth will be served between September and June. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Connell, and I'm the Vice President of the YMCA of Central Massachusetts and the Executive Director of the Montezut Regional YMCA. And we want to thank you so much for our continued support of this program. This would be year 4 of the Spartacus program, which really focus on the age groups between 13 and 18 years of age, the teen population, and primarily within the Main Street area of the YMCA and the Wallace Ave location. We've been successful in the work that we've been doing with this at-risk youth, trying to keep them, number one, from a school perspective, following up on homework, staying out of any court involvement, really changing the trajectory of where they may be going from a life perspective. We've seen their attendance at schools improve. We've seen their grades improve. We've even had, in the last couple of years, in our annual college tour, we've had about 20% of those particular students participating, and we expect in some of the additional programs that they've joined that a number of them will be going on to college. So we're seeing some great success, especially as we're moving into the year 4 of the contributions from the Community Development Block Grant. One unique thing that we're doing in this upcoming for this proposal is that we're also offering a food component. We know that there's a level of food insecurity around the population that we're serving, so we will have a healthy meal for the students as they participate with us as we go into the new year. We have the way this is funded. We are asking for funding for a portion of our teen director who's been with us for 10 years and have led us in multiple capacities. But we, from our annual campaign, which is subsidized by our members and operations, is really what is funding the rest of this program. So the request of $10,000 is just a portion of the program of which the YMCA is backfilling with it. We think it's very important to have this program. We've actually run this in the city of Worcester prior to introducing it here in Fitchburg, and we're very pleased with the results that we're seeing.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay, any questions from the public on this? Yes, Councilor.
I'm in favor of the increase for the YMCA, also for March, 53,000, and the Boys and Girls Club. And I'll explain to you why. At the ages of 13 to 18, it's very critical. You're on the edge where you don't know what to do, and you don't have a lot to do in Fitchburg. Now, the chief came in front of the council Tuesday night for a grant underneath the Shannon Fund, and he said that most of the money goes to high risk students at risk, if they're in school and everything else, getting in trouble. I've been saying all along since I started on the council that I believe that there isn't a lot to do for people from the age of 13 to 18, except for these programs, the MOC program, his program, and the Boys and Girls Club. It helps them to stay out of trouble, and it expands their minds, and they use their minds for imagination purposes, what they're supposed to, instead of getting on a corner and peddling their dope or getting in trouble. I think if we really look at these programs here, I think if anything, what we should try to increase the funds going to these programs, and just try it. We got nothing to lose, but everything to gain, and it's help, because even the chief, right, Chief, if I'm not mistaken, you said the $26,900 some odd dollars goes for high-risk students. So I think we have nothing to lose on these programs, on these 3 programs, and I really think as a planning board, we should try something different for these guys and see how far we can go with this kind of programs for the youth of Fitchburg, especially from the ages from 13 to 18. Because I was young, and I haven't forget, there's nothing to do for a kid that age. You're no longer a kid, you're becoming a man, you're stuck. There's nothing. It's either you're gonna go this path, or you're gonna go this path. So, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Councilor. Yes, Councilor.
David, it's noted that a critical component of the Spartacus program is community service.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you could touch upon some of the community service projects that your youth will do throughout the year.
Well, they were involved in work around the streetscape in terms of Main Street. They've also gone out to camp in the camp programs during the summertime and did reading for our young kids within the community. We do have an area where they specialize on various times to go and clean up parks, etc. So we find a component in every aspect to make sure there's community service. We have modules that we train around community service and give back in every aspect of it. So those were some of the things that comes to mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment?
I just before I just don't want to. I don't think you're leaving, Paul, but I just want to say something before we get to the end of this. I know some people funnel out before, the whole thing's done. Public services has a 15% cap on the total amount. So if the estimated amount of 940,000 thereabouts ends up being correct, that's 140,000 total. That the 15% of that we can allocate to this category. If you funded mock, this, and let's say Boys and Girls Club, the three that you just mentioned, that's 123,000, which basically means you can't fund anything else. Which we have a big one coming up next that's generally funded from at least CDBG through and with help from the city budget. I know the chief's going to get there, not to step on your toes, but so it's important to understand that we have to take a little bit from each in order to fund enough of what everyone wants to fund. That's all I wanted to get across.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next project is the Drug Enforcement Patrol Program, sponsored by the Fitchburg Police Department in the amount of $70,000. Last year, award amount was $52,122. Funds will be used to provide for police overtime expenses related to drug investigation activities in the CDBG strategy area and foot, motorcycle, bicycle patrols in targeted CDBG areas. Police activities include narcotics investigation, surveillance, undercover buys, search warrant services, and arrests, and be used by the Drug Suppression Unit to conduct thorough investigations on mid to high-level dealers in the city of Fitchburg, particularly targeting the heroin and opioid market in designated areas.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. Thank you for the opportunity once again to sit in front of the board and present our case for your consideration. I believe this is the 15th year that the police department has come in front of this board and through the city council requesting assistance on certain projects within the city. Primarily for the last 10 years, it's been dealing around narcotic investigations. I hope there's a year that I don't have to come in front of this board and ask for assistance in this fight. But make no mistake about it, the public health crisis that we're in the middle of, known as the opioid crisis, is not going away. I'd like to just read off some of the statistics, some of the highlights from last year. But before I get into the highlights, I'd like to give the board an understanding of what we saw last year in the city of Fitchburg, what harm has come to our community because of this opioid crisis. We have seen some positives this past year. In 2016, the city of Fitchburg witnessed 322 overdoses within our city borders. Last year, I'm pleased to announce that the overdoses went down. Last year, we reported 221 overdoses. Still not an acceptable level. Until that is zero, we can't discontinue this fight. But it's encouraging to see that the overdose numbers are coming down, and a lot of that I attribute to the availability of Narcan, just the awareness that we're in this crisis, all the components that are working together. One alarming statistic, well, let me back up. Last year, 3 years ago, the Fitchburg Police Department started deploying the life-saving drug Narcan in all our police cars. All our first responders carry Narcan. And last year, we administered Narcan, and we saved 87 lives that were in some type of crisis on an overdose with the administer of 87 doses of Narcan. Those would have been 87 lives that potentially could have been lost and would have added to the numbers. One area that was seeing a little bit discouraging increase in numbers is the suspected deaths to opiate overdoses. While I can't comment on the deaths that we believe happened in 2017 because they have to be classified by the health department, we're suspecting that we saw an increase of at least 15 deaths this year versus last year. In 2016, we registered 18 folks that lost their life because of this crisis. Make no mistake about it, this is a health crisis. We see it every day. We're on the front lines fighting this each and every day. So these are the hard facts of what's happening in our community. And now let me go a little one step further and tell you what we're doing to combat it. We're not only here asking for your assistance for drug investigations, but we want to explain to you that there's a multi-pronged approach. I would say 5 years ago, we were just focused solely on the interdiction of drugs. That changed. That changed really quickly when people started dying at an alarming rate. And we started taking a different approach to the crisis that we're involved now. It's not just drug interdiction. That's what I'm here for you tonight in front of this body, for your support. But there's other things that we're doing out there in the community. It's education, and it's also assisting people that have this health crisis, trying to get them into treatment programs. We've been very fortunate on applying for any grants that we can look for in the community. Currently, we're operating off of a grant from the Executive Office of Public Safety. It's the Heroin and Grant Initiative. We're very fortunate that we're working off of a grant from the District Attorney's Office through AdCare, where we're offering life coaches to people who are in crisis at the very moment they're in crisis. So there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to this opiate crisis. And the funding that I'm asking for continued support goes specifically towards interdiction of drugs coming into our city. That's what the police department does best, is interdict, try to get these drugs before they hit the streets. And just some of the statistics from last year, through your support, through the city council support, the Fitchburg Police Department, we have a full-time drug suppression unit, probably the largest drug suppression unit short of Worcester and Worcester County. In our drug suppression unit, I have a supervisor, a sergeant, and he's accompanied by 3 detectives. I have a detective assigned to a federal task force, which brings us to another level. So this is an area where your support and your funding comes as far as interdiction goes. Last year in the city of Fitchburg, drug detectives, I challenged them in the beginning of the year last year, because we were knee-deep into the beginning of this crisis, and I asked our drug sergeant, I challenged him, I said, I'd like to see at least one search warrant affidavit each and every week. And there's a lot of work that goes into developing probable cause and presenting a case for a search warrant to the clerk magistrate and actually executing that search warrant. Last year, our drug suppression unit executed 52 search warrants. So they lived up to their challenge. They did 1 a week. Out of those 52 search warrants, we made 50 arrests in the city of Fitchburg. Some of these statistics are just astonishing. Last year, we took almost 1,200 grams of cocaine off the street of Fitchburg. We took over 306 grams of heroin off the street. It's just an alarming number of heroin that we took off the street. We took 20.1 grams of fentanyl. Fentanyl was introduced. Everybody's heard fentanyl and the dangers associated with it. It's really hit and escape now. Last year, we confiscated 21 grams. That's a significant amount of heroin, considering a pin of fentanyl could kill you. And to think 21 grams were confiscated through the efforts of our drug suppression unit. In addition to those drugs, our drug detectives took 16 illegal firearms off the street of Fitchburg. They work hard each and every day, and it couldn't be possible without the support through the CDBG funding. This funding goes to these lengthy investigations. Our drug task force is, they're dealing with mid to upper level dealers in the city. Like I said, it's not something I want to come here and ask for, because in a perfect world, we would fix all the sidewalks in the city and we would fund all these programs for the children. This is just the hard reality of it. We're in the middle of a crisis, and we're asking for help to continue these investigations in the future. I'd be open to any questions at that point.
Thank you. Any questions? Comments? No? Questions, comment from anyone in the audience? Yes, Counselor?
You said there were 222 overdoses in 2017. Was that deaths by overdose or just overdoses in general?
We recorded 221 overdoses in general throughout the city in 2017. Deaths we can't classify because they have to be, they come through the Department of Health. I can say that we had X amount of deaths the year previous, but we don't release death figures until the previous year afterwards. But we did have a reduction of over 100 overdoses in the city last year.
Thank you.
Any further comment at this time? Okay.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you for your efforts and everyone involved.
Thank you.
The next application is Transportation Services to After-School Programs, Project Learn STEAM, sponsored by the Boys and Girls Club of Fitchburg and Leominster, in the amount of $60,000. last year's award amount was $15,330. Funds will be used to provide one-way transportation from Fitchburg Schools to Boys and Girls Club after-school program located at 365 Lindell Street in Leominster. Fitchburg schools include Memorial, South Street, Rheingold, Crocker, McKay, Longjo, Sizer, and Fitchburg High School. Estimated approximately 1,440 transportation trips will be provided and 300 Fitchburg youth will be served.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So this year, we've asked for a substantial increase in funding for transportation. We've, so many children from Fitchburg that we've had to add additional buses. And I'm looking at $543 a day to bus children from Fitchburg. And we do not want to leave the children behind. So it's a great program, the children enjoy it, and so we're asking for assistance. Last year, our funding was $15,000 with $543 a day. My January bill, as I anticipate, will be $9,774. So you can figure out that we're subsidizing the transportation, and my budget at this point just really can't afford to do it. So,
And how-
so we're asking for help.
It says about 300 Fitchburg youth are served. Is how many?
314.
314 are currently enrolled in.
Yes.
From Fitchburg. How many? How many does your facility serve? Like 314.
There's actually with it's not counting the children from Flack or Sizer or Monty Tech in that number. If you count all of the Fitchburg kids, it's 361. But CDBG doesn't pay for those schools. Then I also have 222 Leominster children.
Out of curiosity, and you mentioned Sizer's in this, and you mentioned Sizer, and you also mentioned Monty Tech. Have you requested funds from Sizer and Monty Tech, considering they're not under the city's budget?
For transportation, we're going to do that, yes.
Because, like we've said in years past, that obviously we always try and recommend as much as we possibly can, because it is very important to get them to and from after-school programs. But there's also other, there's hopefully other funding sources you can have to offset some of these. And I don't know if it might not be possible, but if you've approached the school department for some sort of agreement about, sharing, part of the school bus contract or whatever, because I would imagine we pay less because we use so much. I don't know.
The school department pays none.
No, not to you. I know that. I'm saying in general, we use a large portion of the busing services in the region to get kids to and from our public schools. If there's some way to, have you guys piggyback off that to get a reduced rate or whatever else, I don't know. But I'm just thinking it must be cheaper for us because, again, you buy in bulk. We use so much of the busing services. So
we requested that, and it hasn't happened.
Okay.
So you do not pay for the 43 students from Sizer, or the 3 from Monty Tech, or the student from the Flack School. So all of the other children, 113 from Memorial, 17 from Crocker, 43 from McKay, 40 from Fitchburg High, 45 from Longjo, 34 from Rheingold, 22 from South Street.
How many buses are used now? You said you had to add a bus.
We had to add, yes, we had to add a bus, so with 3 buses.
3 buses.
Does that include, do your costs include any special needs transportation as well?
No.
Okay.
So the children that do attend from the special schools, from the special needs schools, they're bused in.
You quoted $543 a day to bus the Fitchburg students to the program, the Boys and Girls Club.
Right.
How does that compare to the cost per day for the Leominster students, the Leominster population?
Leominster Public Schools buses their children to our club.
It's at no cost to
At
the.
no cost.
Well, it's also in Leominster,
Yeah.
so.
It's because it's slightly over the line. I'm just wondering, you know, on the
We're-
larger
and
scale.
we are truly slightly over the line.
It is
Yeah.
slightly, it's slightly.
Yeah.
Very slightly. The bus turns around at the mobile
Right.
station
But I'm
and
just
goes back.
wondering whether or not, because this is just a reoccurring issue.
It is.
And it's a huge number, always. And whether or not there should be some legislative, you know, remedy potentially to this, you know, to pursue.
Well, according to the HUD guidelines, we cannot charge the Fitchburg students any amount of money. So they can't help with transportation at all. So we do charge the Leominster students $30 a month, and the schools transport the.
Right, but
the
I'm not
children to
talking
the
about
school.
charging the students, I'm talking about legislation regarding the, you know, crossing over the line for
Oh, I don't
bus
know.
transportation.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
That's
that-
what I'm
we don't
talking
know.
about.
But that most likely wouldn't solve the problem, because then the school department would have to come up with the funds to bus them there, which I'm guessing is part of the issue to begin with anyway, so. I mean, either way, someone's gotta pay for it, even if it can be done. I'm
Right.
sure the school department,
I
I
know.
would imagine theoretically, the school department could, if they had the excess funds, pay to bus kids to Leominster, but I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
That amount of
Shares-
children they'd be
Budgetary
busing
matter.
anyway.
Right.
They're just busing, just can't bus them over the line, right?
So.
The drop off at and then, you know, have a nice sidewalk walk
Right.
down, right?
Right, yeah, because it is it's a very short distance, as you know, from the Kmart Plaza down to our building.
Right.
So we just can't continue to do it. We just can't afford it without, you know, some real help
Yeah.
from you.
And I know and unfortunately, I know it's like, as Paul mentioned, this segment's always capped, and it
Yeah, I
just
mean,
kind of like it's a
60,000's
struggle.
about half of the total amount from this category, so.
But yeah, and it cost me, this year it will cost me just about 80,000.
Oh, I don't doubt it, and I think that the program in general is, you know, a very necessary program. It's just always a question of, you know, how we balance that with, you know, everything else that's in the category, and how we make sure we get you as much as we can possibly get you, and still, you know, get done what needs to get done, so, but you've been in front of us for many years now, so I know where you're coming from, and I don't disagree.
So we'll,
Just a little history, because I'm not totally familiar with the program. How many years has the program been in existence in that location?
since 2008.
And before then, where was it?
We were at Fitchburg State, in the building that they've since renovated. No, actually, they put up a new building. Actually, they tore the building down, and it's the new Science Center. So the building no longer exists. And that's where we were, with 25 Fitchburg kids. We had just started with, and we had 25 Fitchburg kids. And so now we're up to the 314 children.
So each day, it's over 600 students you're serving in that
In the
facility.
facility. Right, and you see and you know, you're familiar with the programs, and I did give you a brochure of the program, so you know that we're doing, you know, tremendous work. We have award-winning robotics teams, we have award-winning national programs, the children do have community service, they're volunteering at Mock, they're trained with the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, so they're helping to prepare taxes. They ring the bells with the Salvation Army every year. You know, we have drug education, we have a Department of Public Health funds to run our All-Stars program. And, you know, we do homework, we work with the teachers, our workforce development program, we employ teens during the summer, we have a volunteer program for the tweens. And there's just, you know, an awful lot going on at our club. So we, you know, we would like to continue to do this. I'm the only grant writer, so I also try and find grants for, you know, to help supplement the transportation, but there just doesn't seem to be enough money to go around. So we do need your help.
Thank you. There's one question, Counselor.
Yeah, Donata, you know that I'm a fan of the work that you do and for the services that are provided to our Fitchburg students. How large of a facility would you need if we were to house a satellite location in Fitchburg for the Boys and Girls Club?
Well, we have 300 and some odd children now. We'd probably have more than that as well. So probably, you know, a similar size facility, which is, now we have a 3,000 square foot facility, so.
Okay, so you would need a large facility.
A large
to-
facility,
As a satellite, if that would be an option.
right. That would be great, because we could provide the same programming that, the STEAM programming that we provide now, and just replicate that in Fitchburg.
I understand, the campus that you're on now had with substantial contributions and renovations, one of the all-stars for the Boys and Girls Club in the nation, so I've heard.
Yes, we are,
Yeah.
yeah. So.
Yes, Counselor?
It's noted in your application that HUD regulations prohibit the club from asking for a membership fee while accepting the 15,000, and the club membership fee is $30 a month. Many have commented that $30 a month is not a hardship. Is that saying that if you accept any CDBG funding, that you cannot request a $30 membership fee from Fitchburg students?
Exactly.
So if you do not receive any funding at all from the CDBG, then you could ask for the $30 a month membership fee? So if you only are awarded 15,000, in essence, it's costing you 65,000 to bus the Fitchburg students at no fee
Right,
for Fitchburg.
right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just to correct the record, it's been mentioned a few times now, it's not necessarily true to say that if one were to accept CDBG funding, you couldn't then accept fees from students, but it is the case that if you were then to accept fees from students, that would have to be classified as program income according to CDBG HUD guidelines, and then it would have to be used towards CDBG eligible activities. So in this case, for programming specifically related to Fitchburg students, which probably in this case would be the busing.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily an either-or scenario, but it's complicated.
So is it something that we can work out and, you know, therefore charge the Fitchburg students $30 a month so that it does help us with this if we do receive funding, or because we've always been told that we can't?
When we met about 2 months ago, we'd said this whole story about it being having to be classified as program income. So I think, again, it's a little bit more complicated, but it's certainly workable.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Not
So
that
it
we
looks like
understood,
there's
so-
something maybe to follow up with.
Yes. And if we could report back to you on that, so that we all have the same understanding.
Yeah.
I think that would be
I know
good.
Larry in years past has explicitly told us, and I don't want to put words in his mouth. Where's Mike O'Hara? I'm pretty sure Larry has explicitly told us that part of the reason why obviously we tried to give them as much as we could, but part of the reason why it was in there was the explicit understanding that if they do accept funds, Larry had told us, I thought in the past, that they couldn't charge Fitchburg students, which is a big, a big factor in any decision we make with something like this. Obviously, the end goal is to make sure that Fitchburg students aren't charged. And I don't know. I was always under the impression if they were charged that it doesn't go to Boys and Girls Club, it gets reprogrammed into the HUD account for block grant funding.
Right, that's what we understood as well.
Yeah, so even if they charged, that it wouldn't benefit them at all. It would go back, not that they would have to spend that $30 a month on Fitchburg specific, that it would have to go into block grant funding to be reallocated into Fitchburg specific.
As I said, it's complicated.
Okay. No, well, yeah, just it's something you might want to clear up, because
Yeah.
Tom sounds on top of it, so
Yeah,
talk to him and.
Yeah, so if we could all be on the same page.
The devil's in the details.
Right.
We go.
Would be good.
But certainly you guys provide a great service, and something
thank
that
you.
we're trying to figure out how we can work out to best solve everyone's everyone's issue in this.
Right, and if it worked out that, we could have a building, relocate, to Fitchburg if we had the help of the city. We'd be willing to do that so that the children wouldn't have to travel by bus, because it does take a long time and it takes a lot out of their day. They're tired when they're out of school, and we do have snack for them, but if they didn't have to travel, and they could stay within their neighborhoods, then that would be good too. That would
Certainly be cheaper to get a few employees from your office to come to Fitchburg than to get 361 students to yours. So maybe a possibility. Thank you,
So I
Councilor
think
Green, for that
that's-
too.
That's something to look into. Thank
Yep,
you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. No,
I got one thing to say
Yes,
here
Counselor?
About the $30 fee. These kids, they go on, the vast majority are from Clegon, vast majority are from Ward 4. And if you read the guidelines in your black book you have in front of you, that these people with the Spartan Club and the MARC program, my area's got 30 to 40% poor below the poverty level. Now we come to a place, pick and choose, the poor can't go, but the well-fortunate can go. We're defeating our purpose here. The purpose is to help educate the kids, not to think about $30 here. It's to help educate, and I get really upset when I hear that, because I read the black book too, and I see what it says about my area, Amy Green's area, Councilor Green, Councilor 4. They're all high areas of poor people, very poor people that can't afford a lot. So $30 to you and me is a kick in the bucket. We spend that at 2 6-packs of beer. But to them, it's like being a millionaire. I mean, really, to save
That's why-
$30.
Right,
it's
and
a
that's
lot
why,
of
and
money.
that's why we have scholarships and we have financial assistance as well. And then we're not charging the Fitchburg kids, so it's,
Okay,
it's
so
a
you're saying
constant.
250 kids are gonna all get scholarships, just pursuing.
We give a lot of financial assistance to our families, so that already happens.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next application is MIHN Family Housing for a Family Pathways Project, sponsored by Montezuma Interfaith Hospitality Network in the amount of $10,000. Last year's award amount was $8,176. Funds will provide emergency housing for homeless families in North Worcester County, including case management and follow-up services. Estimated MIHN will screen at least 250 referrals during the year and continue to try to meet the goal of serving 30 Fitchburg residents in the shelter and emergency services. The funds will be used to partially pay for the MIHN operating manager's salary costs. Good evening.
How you doing?
Good.
Well, thank you for having us tonight. Appreciate you having me. It was a busy year, a lot of families, a lot going on. Just like the Boys and Girls Club, we're largely grant funded. I'm the sole grant writer also, so busy, writing. We also do fundraising and get private donors to give us $5 checks, and that's how we keep the lights on. And so it's constant, trying to fundraise. It's hard out there to come up with funds to keep things going. The big thing, and as you'll notice, we're asking for a $2,000 increase from last year. I could write grants all day for things. I can get a playground, or I can get a playroom, or I can get a driveway worked on, and things like that. But to get things for people, to get, to pay for a salary for someone, it's near to impossible. Okay, to someone that's going to run this program, like my operations manager or myself, someone that has the knowledge to actually work directly with a client. So tough, I'm going to give this to you to look at some of the accomplishments of other grants that I wrote this year. We accomplished so much. This has nothing to do with your grant, but the things that we were able to accomplish were amazing with donations and other grants. But I still have to pay my operations manager, and I still can't do it, So that's why I need to come to CDBG, like we do every year, asking for $10,000 so I can pay her salary, and that's why I'm here tonight.
How many families are you currently servicing?
We have 5 families. That's the max that our shelter can hold. We have 5 bedrooms. And I don't know, maybe next year I'll bring a little video clip to show you the inside of the house so you guys can see what the shelter looks like. I think I brought pictures one year in a picture book, but maybe I'll show a little clip so you guys can see it. So, yeah, that's the size. There's a lot of common area spaces in the shelter, living room, kitchen, playroom. The playroom's in those pictures right there, so you'll see the playroom. The playroom used to be a screen porch that we got a whole bunch of people to donate money, and then we converted it to a playroom. That gets used every day by the kids. That's the biggest room in the house is used, by the little ones. It's the first one right there on the top.
Yep.
So, we would appreciate if you were be able to help us, help pay for the salary for our operations manager, because she's the one that helps me with the grants and keeping the place going.
Excellent. And I apologize, I might have missed it, but I didn't catch your name.
John Hogue, I'm the executive
Excellent.
director of MIHN.
Thank you.
And what type of waiting list do you have? How long do they take?
There's always a long waiting list. And, folks, families stay in our shelter anywhere from a month to a year. It depends on the family, and people always say, well, what makes the family stay short time or a long time? Well, if I have a family that comes to us with a 2-person family and they have jobs, and they've never been evicted and whatnot, they'll be in and out once they save money first, last, and security. If a single mom shows up and she doesn't have a job and she has 2 or 3 kids and she's been evicted before, she's going to be with us for a long time, because to find a job, save first, last, and security deposit, and then have to find an apartment that she can afford by herself, and then to find a landlord that will take her because she has an eviction on her record, we have an uphill battle that's almost insurmountable. So that's a long haul. So, and that's part of the work that we have to do. So it's a challenge. So thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Any questions from the board? No. Questions from the public, this application? Yes, Counselor?
What's the location of where you house the families?
The shelter is at 758 Main Street in Leominster. It's right across from Johnny Appleseed Elementary School.
And you estimate you serve 30 Fitchburg residents during the year?
That's what we strive to do, but it fluctuates because, it depends on who's on the waiting list. We might get calls from Fitchburg families, or we might not. Also, let's say a Fitchburg family gets on the waiting list because we're full, then when we have an opening, we call them, and then they've solved their own problem, or their cell phone has gotten turned off because they've moved, or they haven't paid their bill, or whatever, and we can't get in touch with them. That happens all the time. By the time we have an open bedroom, we have to look back at our waiting lists going back 8 months sometimes, and that's where we start calling people back. So that's just the reality of the situation. We have a stack that's like that by the time we call people.
So you aim to serve 30 Fitchburg residents? Do you keep statistics on what you have served in the past year?
Yeah, we do.
About 30 or?
That's what we try to do. That's the goal.
No, she's asking real, like what you did 2017.
Yeah, I don't have that with me tonight. No,
Do you know
I
what
don't.
you served in 2016?
I don't
for
have that
Fitchburg?
with me, no.
Okay.
But that data has been turned into the CDBG. We get asked for it every month. We
Madam Chair,
report
if I
on
Yeah,
it.
may,
certainly.
The last several years, they have met their goal.
Okay.
They submit data, all
Every month.
recipients do on a quarterly basis, as well as yearly. And their earmarks for Fitchburg residents have been met.
Okay.
in the last several years.
Yeah, we have to submit reports every month.
Thank you.
And we understand this is really one of the only shelters
It
in a
is the
large
only
swath
shelter.
for families
The only family shelter in our region.
in the region.
Yep.
That's pretty significant.
It's scary, really, when you think about it. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your continued efforts. Our next application is Accessible No-Cost Exercise Opportunity, sponsored by Community Health Connection, the amount of $50,000. Prior year not applicable. Project funds will be used to build out a fitness center at 326 Nichols Road that will be free to community health center patients. And $10,000 will be used for equipment. Proposed project activities are building the fitness center, locker rooms, bathrooms, space for staff person, physical therapist, intern to aid patients. Goal is to serve up to 350 people a year, providing opportunity for CHC patients to improve their overall health outcomes, encouraging activity, creating a healthier lifestyle, and aiding in the treatment of medical conditions such as diabetes, heart disease, and obesity.
I couldn't said it better myself. I'm Jackie Buckley, the Chief Operating Officer at Community Health Connections. This is my colleague, Julia Sarcinelli. We provide at Community Health Connections primary care, pediatrics, dental care, behavioral health, psychiatry, optometry, and podiatry. And we do all of that for people who have insurance, people who have Medicaid, Medicare, health safety net, and for people who don't have any of those things, we provide it on a sliding fee scale that goes right down to nothing. So in light of that, unlike a typical practice that would be revenue generating with a margin you can see, ours is virtually invisible. And our patients, a significant portion of our patients are below the poverty line and cannot afford to join a commercial gym or participate in a lot of the kinds of things that would assist them to, have healthy weight. And one of the reasons that we provide that whole range of services is to be a one-stop shop so that people can really get all the services they need by getting on the MARC bus and showing up at our door. People often try to align their appointments so that they can, see one provider after another. Because of the low socioeconomic population, that we serve, they have a very high risk for type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, sleep apnea, and all the things that then subsequently lead to risks of stroke, cancer, osteoarthritis, and other systemic diseases. So we really want to have this opportunity to build out an area that we have partially built, but we have not got the resources to finish it. And so when we built the building, it was plumbed in for this, which is why this is a fairly modest sum. But the finishing it just isn't possible for us. And what we know is this one opportunity to get this built out so that the bathrooms are complete and the gym area is complete. And we'll provide a staff that manages the activities and the exercise. It will allow people that come in for care to then be routed, possibly with a warm handoff, right to the facility where they'll have the opportunity to learn some exercises that they can do at the center and then hopefully also at home. Really, the idea is to reduce risk factors for people by encouraging activity, teaching them how to engage in those kinds of activities. Initially, when we thought about doing this, we thought it was a fabulous idea, but we ended up having to value engineer that whole piece out of our project. I welcome your questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board on this application? Do you expect any new services aside from the current patients that you're serving to utilize this facility?
Well, the patient population that we serve continues to grow. We have expanded the number of providers to accommodate and to make accessibility to our services as quick as possible. And what we know is that folks that can afford to go and join Boost have done that. What we have is folks that are not going to get those opportunities, and we want to help get them exercising, moving, learning how to do stretching and flexibility, balance and strength building. Over 70% of the adults in this region are present company accepted, overweight, and we know that the risks are highest for our lowest socioeconomic population, and that's the folks we predominantly serve. So I know that maybe that will be a reason somebody wants to come and get their care, because they might have the opportunity to get somebody to give them that warm handoff to an exercise program. So that's our goal. We look forward to hoping you'll fund that opportunity for us.
Thank you. Is there any questions, comments? Yes, Counselor?
I was just wondering, why wouldn't the insurance companies want to be on board with you if you're talking about exercises and to make life better for people. I mean, really, I mean, isn't the whole purpose to try to be paid because they don't like to pay?
There are commercial insurers that, that do actually help pay gym memberships or other sorts of things. Sadly, only about 15% of our patient population have commercial insurers. Many of them are the people that actually work for our organization, all of whom know they can't get better health care somewhere else, so they get it where we work.
Okay. I guess one of the, and it's up, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there's a permit for CHC for that facility to improve the roadway in that area. So just one of the concerns would be, again, if there's an increase in services as well as of, when those roadway improvements are going to be completed.
I don't have a timeline on that. That's a tall order.
And I think we're requesting them to come in relatively soon to give us a timeline on that, do we not?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I know. We talked about, yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll see you again in the
we will
future is the
talk-
point of that conversation.
Yeah, so
Right.
but it's just, just one of those things
I
about
pled with
services.
with
The
your
pled.
construction supervisor, and I think our whole board did, years ago, when this whole thing started, before you had the hiccup with the construction project, to implore and to, we'll talk about this later, but to implore Health Alliance to work with you, or UMass, whoever it is now, to work with you to get that part of your project funded, because they use it more probably than you do, if not as much. So anyway, like I said, that's aside from this.
I walk that road every day on my lunchtime.
Doesn't get better,
circuit,
yes.
So I know of what you speak.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you.
You bet. Thank you very much.
The next application is the bike loan program at Fitchburg Library in the amount, sponsored by Joel Caddy, and the amount of, Counselor Joe Caddy, in the amount of $10,000. Not applied for previous years. Funds will be used to expand the bicycle loan program, which started in 2017 with a soft opening and will be going public in the spring of 2018. The intent of the program is to promote physical activity and its health benefits, as well as alternative transportation to all Fitchburg residents. Future plans will include a safe bike program. Funding will provide for routine maintenance for all bikes and preparing donated bikes for use.
Thank you.
Good evening, Counselor.
Joel Caddy. So, complete streets in Fitchburg, in my opinion, is probably one of the biggest things that we can do moving the city forward. I was a little instrumental in writing our complete streets policy. I attended several seminars. So, looking around what other cities are doing around the state, the country, other countries, I think that for years and years, what we did in Fitchburg is we made streets for automobiles. We did not consider any other forms of transportation. The idea of starting the bike program at the library was more like a grassroots idea. I spoke to several companies that rented bikes, but they weren't interested in us. So the program started last year on social media. The nice part of the story is I had 2 brand-new bicycles delivered to my house in a box that had to be put together. I had people donating bikes to me that needed work. But anyway, we ended up between 12 and 15 bicycles for the library. It was a little nerve-wracking because I didn't think I could pull it off, we could pull it off, but we did. So without any fanfare, we got the bikes to the library. We were able to buy locks, helmets. If you have a library card, you can go to the library and anybody can take a bike for the day, get a helmet, a lock, take the bike. So since that started, the college purchased the theater block, and the city of Fitchburg and Leominster has received the money for a bike trail between Fitchburg and Leominster. So this program, this money I'm asking for is just to sustain this for a year or two, because I do believe it's going to take off. I do think that maybe in the future that we will attract a company to come in to rent bicycles. But on the other hand, this is Fitchburg. If we can sustain this program and bring more bicycles in, it doesn't cost anybody anything. If we can continue along the lines with complete streets and make our streets safe for pedestrians and bicycles, I think this program is destined to take off. If the money is not there for me through CDBG, I'll probably get by, but I think it's going to be, it'll be difficult for me to sustain this with a library. And I listened to all the important factors, the important programs in here tonight. But to me, this is really a quality of life issue for the city. I mean, there's needs everywhere, but I think this is really something that everyone could benefit from. People there are a lot of people in the city that can't afford a car and they can't afford a bicycle. If we can pull this off, I think that this would benefit an awful lot of people.
Thank you. Do you know how many have been served
I don't.
process the program? How?
I didn't want to bother the librarian to come here tonight. Again, I don't think a lot of people know that this program's in place, and it was made. I didn't want to bother the librarian to come here tonight. Again, I don't think a lot of people know that this program's in place, and it was made that way on purpose. Go nice and slow with it, see how we can pull it off. I'm hoping in the spring we will have a grand opening with it. I think we'll bring it to the public's attention.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Does this says you want more bikes, right?
This won't necessarily.
What I read.
I'm not going to go out and purchase bikes. I think that when we go online with this, I think I will get more people giving us bikes. But every bike I get, we have to make sure is being taken care of. And I'm not a bike mechanic, so I'm going to need someone to do that for us. And then on a routine basis, check the bikes so that they're in good working order.
Okay, all right.
In the library, we're covered under their liability policy, so the city won't be on the hook for any accidents.
Okay, the question, yes?
And I have a great idea. The maintenance of the bikes is a good skill to teach the kids, and the kids could manage. I know there's a club in New Jersey that actually has a whole center where they renovate and work on bikes, and it would be a great cooperative effort with the kids to work on the bikes, keep them, renovate them, put on the new seats, the tires, to do whatever, and help you out. And you'd be developing skills with the kids as well.
At the beginning of this program, Keene State University started a program about 15 years ago. And a volunteer came forward several years ago. It was a program that was not going to make it. And this gentleman came forward and volunteers his time. They have Keene State University has over 1,300 bicycles in use. And I went up there, met with the person, spoke to Sharon Bernard, and we kind of made ours similar to his, except for they got 1,300 bikes, I got 15. But I'm hoping with the college moving to the theater block, with us progressing with complete streets, that this could really work for people.
Where did the $10,000 figure come from? Like, is that a necessary amount?
I'm thinking that $10,000, I'm not gonna pay somebody a lot of money to do things. I'm gonna squeeze that money and have it as long as I can to keep bicycles in working order.
I think, do you have to expend that within the year?
You would, yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have to get reprogrammed, so.
Well, that'd be fine. I mean, if we didn't use it, like I said, I'm not gonna go out and spend money just to spend money. I wanna try to make this work.
Okay. We're just trying to figure out how much you could.
The question we
Would
always
figure
ask
how
people that sit in front of us, and it's usually when we start working on the numbers, is what's the minimum you could possibly work with, get the job done, and because especially in this category, all these numbers have to get minimized.
So I can plan for that. I think What I'm gonna have to do is go out and find a bike mechanic that could come in once a week, maybe on a Saturday morning. I had a person that I thought was gonna do this for me, and we gave him a space, and I told him he could have his own bike shop there if he wanted, and make a little bit of money, and we'd pay him to do this. And, it just didn't work out.
Okay.
So I'm volunteering.
Yep, that's excellent. That's fantastic.
I'm volunteering my kids, so we'd be glad to help out.
Well, Joel, you should talk to her because you could get this done for free and not need this funding. So talk to the Boys and Girls Club. And
I'm not sure if I think we would have to have people that are trained. I would be a little nervous.
We do have some volunteers that help us with our bikes.
Okay.
So-
You research it
It's
further.
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Counselor, yes.
Speaking for the Lonsdale Foundation, that runs the Lonsdale Classic, I would think that we could also help with funding or experts in bike use and maintenance that could help the Boys and Girls Club and with the bike loan program as well, with connecting those knowledgeable repair people with the routine maintenance.
That would be excellent.
That would be great.
Terrific.
Thank you. And that's 8 proposals underneath this category, for a total of 291,000 in requests, which she said it was 15%.
Yeah, so 15% of that number is about 140,000, give or take, assuming the number ends up being 940,000, which we don't know that it's going to be. We're hoping that it's going to be. So those numbers are always in flux. So everyone keep that in mind too. That those numbers will change over time. Hopefully, just a few thousand here or there, but in this category, even a few thousand makes a big difference. So.
All right. Our next category is economic development, which we have the Small Business Technical Assistance Program, sponsored by New View Communities, in the amount of $25,000. Last year's award amount was $20,440. Funds will provide outreach and technical assistance to businesses, leverage loans for small businesses. It's estimated 40 businesses will be served, 65 jobs will be created, 43 businesses counseled. 4 loans with a value of $100,000 total will be facilitated, and 26 business plans developed. Funds will be used to pay staff salary. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Ray Belanger, Director of Small Business Technical Assistance at New View Communities. I'd like to thank you for the prior year's support, and I wanted to share some numbers with you from the past 8 years. Even though the program has been supported longer than that, I had 8 years of readily accessible numbers. So CDBG funding over the past 8 years has assisted in working with 272 individuals who developed 196 business plans to either start a business, grow a business, or stabilize a business that was in jeopardy of closing. That assistance helped 32 of them obtain $1,499,500 in loans, again, to either launch, grow, relocate, or stabilize the business. All of that work, developing the plan, securing capital, created or retained 338 jobs within the city of Fitchburg. So again, thank you for the prior support, and we look forward to partnering going forward.
Questions from the board on this application? No, any questions from the public in this application? Comments? Yes, comment, certainly.
I want to echo Mr. Belanger's remarks. As Economic Development Director, I'm on the front lines with a lot of inquiries on any given month, and I am not exaggerating, 8 to 10, often 12 a month, small businesses that are getting in touch with me. These can be emerging, not yet open, or existings. And because we have the technical assistance right in our community where they can sit one-on-one, it's been absolutely invaluable. None of us want someone to go off and launch a venture when they're not yet ready. So he's helping them to make sure that they've done their homework, and when they do actually launch their business, they actually can succeed. So there's been intervention with existing businesses that need a little assistance on something, but most particularly helping those as they're getting ready with an idea. So I just can't say enough good things about the one-on-one advisement that is provided through this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
And I do as well.
certainly.
Ray has helped our students who have just started, our members that have just started a business. They just started a silk screening business with Ray's help. And they also have a contract with Land's End where they provide vests, fleece vests and jackets. And they have the exclusive contract with the Visitor Center on Route 2. So,
Excellent.
but all with
Wow.
Ray's help.
All right, terrific.
We have entrepreneurs.
Very good news. Yes, Jay?
Yeah, just in full disclosure too, I'm going to speak on behalf of both the university and as a Newview board member to support this, but mainly from the perspective too of the university, of where we've been collaborating more with Newview and particularly Ray's group on the small business and expanding into the IDEA Enterprise Lab, which we'll be talking about more in a little bit. And this is an opportunity to continue to expand that and provide that outward piece to the Enterprise Center.
Thank you. Counselor?
Could you just share some of the businesses some of the successful local small businesses that you've helped counsel over the years?
Well, there's many, as I indicated, the several hundred, and I don't want to necessarily name because everything we do is confidential. But I'll share a story about someone who came into me who barely spoke English, so we used an interpreter to work with initially. He had not filed taxes because he had issues trying to get a tax return prepared because somebody thought maybe he wasn't on the up and up. So I worked with this client. We were able to recreate numbers for prior 2 years where he was able to file taxes. He was actually able to get some money back, which helped him come up with a down payment for the business. We were able to secure a loan for him. He started a business. He's on Main Street. He's now in his 5th year of operation. He employs 4 other people in addition to himself. A year ago, last October, he went through Newview's first-time home buyers program, bought a home. So over roughly a 5-year period, he went from somebody barely speaking English, not filing taxes, to creating 5 jobs, 1 for himself and 4 others, and becoming a homeowner. So that's a typical client. We work with low, moderate income. We work with the immigrant populations. And these are people who need that helping hand to get them stabilized and business owners and homeowners.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you very much. Any further on this application? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next project is 533 Main Street Social Enterprise Restaurant Cafe, sponsored by GAMMHA Inc. in the amount of $32,500. Last year, what amount not applicable. Support training and employment. It will be part of a proposed restaurant to be opened on the first floor of 533 Main Street. Fast casual restaurant will focus on locally sourced healthy ingredients, including those grown by people in recovery on GAMHA's new supportive housing farm project in Athol, and baked goods sourced from the social enterprise bakery opening in Gardner. Funds will be used to hire a head chef or caterer to run the social enterprise and develop a training curriculum. An estimated 20 people will be enrolled in the culinary training and employment program. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sean Hayden. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Gamma. It's a little easier to, we just say Gamma.
Gamma.
We're headquartered in Gardner.
Can I ask what it stands for?
Yeah, sure. Everybody does, right? So it's actually legally been truncated to Gamma, and it's actually GAAMHA. So it was originally Gardner Athol Area Mental Health Association. And I think all of our receptionists kept quitting because they had to say that every time they answered the phone. So we shortened it to Gamma. So the request that we have, well, let me tell you, Gamma is a 50-year-old human services agency headquartered in Gardner. We do a number of different things germane to this conversation. Two of the things we do are residential substance use disorder services and sober housing, along with social enterprise. So this particular proposal we're asking you to consider is part of a much bigger initiative that we're proposing to do at 533 Main Street, which is the old YWCA building downtown. We've put a partnership together with a developer to acquire and renovate that building, and we're here to ask for help with the first floor project. But up above it, and part of the whole big picture is it would create 10 apartments, which would represent 40 beds of sober supportive housing for people in recovery from substance use disorders. So that's a service we have a long track record of carrying out successfully throughout North Central. We have about 72 people in residential settings that are in recovery throughout North Central now, and more beds coming online shortly. So the idea is to renovate this building, create 2 floors of residential programming on the top 2 floors. And on the first floor, we're looking to open a restaurant that would do a couple of different things. It would provide job opportunities for the people we serve. It would also provide training opportunities for people in recovery from substance use disorders. Addiction doesn't happen in a vacuum. There are risk factors and social factors and environmental factors that go into setting someone up for addiction, and recovery doesn't happen in a vacuum either. So we're very proud of the clinical services we provide, the counseling, the case management, but the reality is the greatest clinician on earth can do very, very little for someone if they don't have a roof over their head, a full stomach, and the means by which to support themselves. So when we look at addiction and recovery, we see that those social determinants have as much, if not sometimes more value than the clinical services that we focus on so much. You know, as Chief Martineau alluded to, the opiate epidemic is not going away. I don't believe we're going to legislate our way out of the problem. I don't believe that we're going to just keep treating people over and over again to resolve this problem. I think we need to uplift people in recovery, create opportunities for them to grow out of the problem and sustain themselves in the long term. This specific proposal is intended to be a one-time help with a startup cost to get the trainer on board. There's a specific individual in mind, and he's got a unique background of a lifelong career in culinary services, and is also a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. So he's a pretty unique individual who is interested in filling this role for us, and you know, we're excited to bring this project to Fitchburg.
Thank you. So in the application, it mentioned about like a bakery opening in Gardner. Is there a similar facility in Gardner now? Or?
Yes, we have a building that opened last year. We bought and renovated a historical building in downtown Gardner. And that particular version of what we're trying to do here is we built 12 studio apartments and 2 commercial spaces, did a complete renovation, and the studio apartments are all permanent housing for people in recovery. One of the commercial spaces was rented to a peer recovery center, Alyssa's Place, which is run by the AED Foundation. And the other space, we're opening a small bakery/restaurant there as well. And just this week, we opened our farm in Athol, which is 9 beds of supportive housing and a 30-acre working farm with an 18-stall barn. We have livestock, and we're looking to grow about 8 acres of produce this year to help supply these operations as well as our other residential programs. So we have a continuum of care for substance use services, and we have a parallel continuum of economic opportunity for the people we serve at the same time.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? All right, questions, comments on this app proposal? Yes?
You had mentioned that you're working with a developer to purchase the building and presume do some renovations. So what kind of a timeline are you on for that purchase and then to do the renovation so that this program can operate?
Sure. So there's a verbal commitment verbal agreement to purchase the building. The written agreement is in the current property owner's hands, and we're told it'll be returned within, it may have come back today. Construction timeline is roughly 10 to 12 months from, you know, planning to development and actually carrying out the construction. Did I answer all your questions? I don't know. Did I miss them? Okay.
Purchase and construct, yeah.
Thank you. Counselor?
I would say that when we toured Sean's location up in Gardner, it really is a gold standard on how this type of work should be followed through with sustainability and keeping people with a roof over their head, employed, and with a skill set
to stay in recovery and have a successful recovery. So I'm a big fan of the program that's already in place in Gardner, and I look forward to working hand in hand with him here in Fitchburg to replicate that same business model.
I just have a procedural question, and that might be why you asked that question, but does the Community Development Department do any research as to if they're, let's say theoretically the time frame is on the low end of that, 10 months to complete construction. So let's say you buy it in 2 months, which is probably a month, or 2 months, which is probably conservative as well. So let's say a year to when you open, if the funds are to hire a chef, how can you spend that money in year 44 under this program if it's not open yet?
So ordered in July.
Okay.
Sure, so that's why we sought half an FTE, one-half FTE
Okay.
salary.
Okay. All right.
That in
Yeah,
mind.
we'll have more questions about the specifics, I'm sure, but
Sure.
it's just, yeah, perfect.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And the last proposal in this category is the CDBG Business Loans and Grants sponsored by the Fitchburg Community Development Department in the amount of $100,000. Last year, award amount was $76,650. Funds provide grant incentives for building owners with prospective tenants in the Main Street Commercial District, encourage accessibility improvements such as elevators or lifts, code improvements including sprinkler systems, grease traps, venting, and missing elements required by code for the proposed use of the district to encourage accessibility improvements such as elevators or lifts. Estimated that 3 to 5 businesses will be served. 2 to 6 full-time equivalent jobs and 1 to 2 units made handicap accessible. Good evening.
So, yeah, I think it's worth noting there's sort of two distinct pots, as it were, here. So there's the business loan revolving fund, and then there are grants specifically to go towards ADA and health and safety, which is something ADA is part of Year 43's grant program, but the health and safety in particular has been identified as a big need, particularly with Main Street businesses. You've got a lot of older buildings, you've got a lot of deferred maintenance, and at the same time, people are taking on a risky venture. So a lot of other communities have done something like this. We thought it would be a nice addition to our program, which is why the cost estimates bumped up a bit this year.
Did we, out of the 76 last year, and I know there's still 4 or 5 months left, but did we facilitate any business loans with that 76,000 last year?
We haven't engaged in a loan. We do have, there were 2 interested businesses. I'm not sure if one is going to go through, but is the other
So there may be one in the works is the answer to that question?
Correct.
There may be 2 in the works, and a third that we've had discussions with. You know, when you don't get the allocation for funding until October, and then holidays come, and we anticipate, and as is often the case, things ramp up in spring as people are looking to make investment decisions.
The reason why I asked that, and obviously we've gone through a lot of years of block grant with most of the members on the board. The worst thing we can do is fund something that doesn't typically use that funding or make good use of that funding. Right. So if we funded 76 last year and you don't use 76, or you use 76 for the sake of using 76,
right.
We don't want to fund you don't want to fund 100, right. And just to have that money there. I know it's great just in case, but there's a lot of stuff here that we got to fund.
Could I? Sure. So we anticipate with the new expansion of the program that the demand is going to increase, and I think Mary Jo could probably speak more to that.
What we've learned just over the past year, but I would say even 2 years, working with so many different interested parties, and the good news, people want to open businesses in Fitchburg, particularly along the Main Street. The condition of the spaces has been so daunting that there have been a limited number who could actually execute on that idea. And we have a much better sense of the conditions because of some of the vacant space inventory done with an architect who was under contract with the North of Maine Initiative. Now we know what we have on our hands, where the sprinklers are, where they're not, where the kitchen is, where it's not. The interest is there, but we've just lacked the ability to help some of those interested parties overcome what I call remedial repairs, because there's always going to be tenant fit out. But some of these spaces, most of them, have remedial repairs just to get to sort of baseline, and that's really what we were thinking of.
Okay.
And I guess you can't predict the future, but I fully anticipate we use every dime of what we have, and not just because it's there, but because it's necessary and we have interest.
Do we know, I mean, because I know the business loan pool has been around for a long time. And if memory serves, very rarely is it anywhere near 100% utilized. It's almost always reprogrammed funds. 16, do we have any idea how much of the allocation? I don't have the number in front of me, what the allocation was in 16. I'm sure it wasn't 76. I think it was much, much, much lower.
We have not asked for business loan pool funds every year, and the funds do recycle.
I remember we took like a 4 or 5 year hiatus and.
Right, and when we, and there have been, in the 11 years I've been here, I think twice, we have reprogrammed some funds that didn't, so we don't let them sit. If they're not gonna get spent, we will reprogram them to another activity, but we also do have funds that recycle now because of the economy and a few other things.
Right, the revolving fund that we have.
We don't have a lot of revolving, we don't have funds really revolving, although we do have one loan that's about to go into repayment, so but that will take, that's a 5-year amortization.
Right.
before that gets
I know in the past we've talked about replenishing the revolving fund. I don't know. I guess I was more curious as to how much we typically use, what we typically use. I don't think it's a big number, but that's only because it hasn't been a big number allocated.
Right. This is a big number request.
Yeah.
And we do expect that less of this funding is going to recycle because we think the demand for the grants for the life and safety and accessibility is going to be in higher demand.
I hope it is. Good.
And just a note, should Centro not receive funding, they would be eligible for the ADA grant portion.
Okay.
And actually, it's something I'd mentioned with Susan Navarre. She was presenting today. That's something that's definitely, I would think would be applicable. We'd have devil's always in the details.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a question. Of the $76,000 requested for last year, how much of that do you anticipate spending on loans before June?
It's so hard to say. If we received a number of applications for the accessibility and the life safety, then it might all go to that.
How much of it is anticipated to go to ADA grants?
It's hard to say.
The flexibility is good to have.
Right.
We could have just as well separated it, but depending on the context and the situation and what we have in front of us, it is very difficult to be in a position, and actually, case in point, there are numerous times in year 43 where we would love to make some health and safety improvements with grants, not loans, because we feel like it's that important, and the numbers and the margins don't work for them to take out a loan
Do you consider that to be a little troublesome, that we're talking about this in January, and out of the $76,000, none of it is earmarked to be spent?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Well, it goes till July 1st, right? So we're only halfway through not even halfway through the.
And again, we didn't get
And
the
we're asking for
allocation.
another $100,000 for next year.
Right, which doesn't start until, next.
It'll start in July.
Well, but you don't get the numbers, and you don't get the finalized numbers until
October.
Yeah,
So
October.
again,
so it's really only been 3 months.
This past year was a little different. Usually July 1 is when we start, and usually by August.
I know there's funding up in the air
We
from
didn't
the
get the money
government.
until October
Right.
this year because of some
Do you have
federal issues.
any plans, or what are your plans for outreach for this? Because, oftentimes, it's just because people are not aware of it. So you're like, oh, so we're targeting downtown, so anybody who asks, it's like, well, are you gonna actually more approach, or send information to these property owners of like, yeah, we can actually fix your doorstep and do all these other things, and we have a timeline, tell us you're interested.
One thing that began sort of a new approach about a year and a half ago, was we gathered together the property owners of, in this case, some of the downtown spaces that are vacant. They'd never been gathered together before, and so in that case, the context was enlightening them to some north of Main resources, but we continue to communicate with that group, and that's a great way to get the word out when they're shopping their space to prospects, so that they're aware that these resources exist.
Yeah, 2 counselors. Council Boschman?
Question on this, 3 to 5 businesses. the city of Pittsburgh seems to be hard out. And we wanna look good, so we're gonna take anybody. Are we gonna be selective of who we're gonna put downtown? I asked you this question before, what is the game plan? I mean, you're coming in front of me, you're asking them for $100,000, you get 76,000, what's the game plan? What is the game plan?
So, Councilor Boschman, we've had this conversation in numerous occasions about what is the game plan, and I think there also is the case where private industry is going to make the choices on where they want to locate. And so we've talked about certain businesses that have come in, and you've mentioned, well, why is that business coming in here? What are you guys going to do about it? Well, there isn't anything that we can do to tell a business not to come. But there are certainly things we can do to encourage a business to come or to encourage a business to open up a satellite location. There's a couple different situations where we have folks regionally that are looking to expand, and we'd like to convince them to do that. A phone call to say, hey, it would be great if you could move to Fitchburg. I don't have anything for you, but it would be nice. Doesn't go as far as, hey, we have a business loan pool. We have grants that can go towards ADA accessibility. So this gives us a tool to be proactive and to be strategic, to make choices. Without that, we don't have that tool.
River Styx is a great example of that.
And you're preaching to the choir, Tom. Do you know how many people stop me and say, how can the planning board let another, auto company on John Fitch Highway? It's like, yeah, that's not what we're here for.
Right, and I think it's worth noting on the case of River Styx, it was just recently voted by Metro West Boston News as the best new brewery in the Commonwealth. And I think that's what we're dealing with here in terms of businesses are businesses that cannot get traditional, conventional funding, or at least can't get as much as they need. And the reason they can't get it is because they're looking not at, the banks are not looking at what the market is today or what the market could be in 5 years. They're looking at what the market is today. And I think for us to make investment decisions in more visionary businesses like River Styx, which, 2 years ago, if they went to a bank and said, I want to open up a brewery in Fitchburg, they probably would have laughed them out of the room, or at least not given them their full due. And we're able to listen, and we're able to work with the FRA and the chamber and put together something to make it work for somebody to take a risky investment in Fitchburg. And ultimately, we've seen to succeed.
Excellent.
One additional comment, if I could. You were asking, what's the plan? And as you know, Counselor, we are in the throes of an economic development strategic plan. One of the things we've learned during some of these sessions with our consultant is that we as a city, and this is done through a data grab and an analysis, we as a city have what's called a leakage, meaning our consumer population spends on dining, but a disproportionate amount of that spending is occurring outside of our city. What that means is we don't have as many dining establishments per capita as a population city of our size would normally have. I only use that as one example. It's not to say that's the only kind of business that we're courting, but we are underserved in the dining department. And so that whenever opportunities come up for people that have food-related ideas, that's certainly one of the ones that we have our sights on in some of the commercial kitchen spaces that have been dormant, and us desiring to have those brought back to active use.
Thank you. And Councilor Green?
Yes, working with the Economic Development Plan over the last year, I believe that we have identified certain parcels of privately owned buildings on Main Street that could most definitely utilize this program to get them retail ready. So we continue to be open for business. It has been difficult, as noted, to get the pieces of the puzzle all put together because they're not easy spaces to work with. They're not easy spaces to conform to what we need them to be now. Safety ready, sprinklers, 2 means of egress, handicap bathrooms, and those are all big ticket items when you're talking about a private small investor wanting to come in, and now before you can even walk in the door, they need, $100,000 for fit out for a property that's never going to be theirs, that they're just going to rent. So this is a tool for us to use and all understand how to use it properly, to put the pieces of the puzzle together. That's my only comment.
Thank you.
So thank you for the work.
Thank you.
And if I could just make one last comment in terms of how the funds have been used over history, I guess. I can't speak for year 40 or year 41 or year 42, but I can speak for year 43 and what we're hoping to see and what we're valuing within this department in year 44. So again, I think it might be a little aggressive, but I also think it's well within the means of what's capable on Main Street.
Thank you. Yes, one last comment? Yes?
I just wanted to echo support, working with small businesses on a regular basis. And we are located on Main Street in Fitchburg. Certainly one of our primary targets to site businesses is Main Street in Fitchburg. And we just don't have a lot of good leasable space for commercial ventures. So certainly upgrading these storefronts, upgrading any properties, commercial properties in downtown is certainly a key economic development initiative.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are on to our next category of rehabilitation and preservation. First project is code enforcement, sponsored by the Fitchburg Board of Health, in the amount of $152,000. Last year's award was a $153,300. Used to pay 100% of 2 existing full-time Board of Health inspector positions and 50% of 1 full-time clerk.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening, Mr.
First
Curry.
off, I'd like to thank you for 43 years of funding. As you know, the funding does support 2 full-time inspectors in the CDBG target area. It also funds a part-time clerk. In addition to the inspections, basically the inspectors are on a daily basis working in the neighborhoods to try to find those areas where blight exists, trying to keep the city clean, trying to keep the curbside violations under control, and also tackling what has become, and I've said it every year to this board, is the vacancy foreclosure issue. I'm pleased to announce to the board that the CDBG inspectors have filed over 70 cases in housing court in the year period last year, as well as assistance from the Attorney General's office and our legal assistance team. We have had 28 receiverships, whereby most of those receiverships are either financial institutions or banks that are out of state, and they're just sitting on them. Those 21 of them are actually moving in the right direction. There is potential. Some of them are for sale and still sitting, but some of them are moving in the right direction with new owners. You've seen a spike in, obviously, issues before the zoning board on the 2-year vacancy issue. I think that is a lot to do with these 2 inspectors out there trying to push occupancy in our vacant, blighted, or those areas that have become blighted because of the vacancy. And as I stated, they also have many tasks as far as lead paint and lead inspections, and working with the task force, the NICE task force, which includes fire, as well as the building department. We do try to team up quite often on those difficult properties that require multiple code enforcement agencies, so they're quite active.
The vote. Any questions from the board?
I just have a question for you, Steve. You guys, your office does a great job, and certainly this is just, I don't mean anything by this, I'm just curious. Last year, I thought I remembered the bump in funding last year was worded as only temporary, and they were going to try and get that one position back in the budget funding versus CDBG. Am I confusing this with the fire department, Mike?
Yeah, I don't.
Building? Oh, building. Okay, it was. That's right.
And I believe that has
It was.
occurred. Yeah.
Building.
Okay, that's right. I'm just trying to reconcile the funds here. If you've been, I know it's gone up since we've gotten the new inspectors, but I'm curious as to how it goes in the CDBG program, so.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this application? Council Green?
I would like to just point out that based on the numbers, the work that the two inspectors do with the help of the full-time clerk, I believe enables us to bring in more revenue than $152,000 that's requested, based on, you know, the tickets and the work that they're doing through having those two inspectors and the full-time clerk as backup for the work to be done, that it's greater than $152,000. It was just a comment, that's all I'd like, is that the work that the inspectors are doing, either by being proactive or writing the tickets and finding, could equal more than $152,000.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Shall I comment on that?
No, because then we get into reprogram funds, and that gets much more complicated, does it not?
But it does occur.
Yeah, since you brought it up, and I know we've talked about it in the past about police, just very quickly, are there reprogram funds from?
Yes.
Okay.
Any fines that are issued are fines, fees, any funds that these two inspectors produce is refunded, yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The next project is Critical Home Repair, sponsored by Habitat for Humanity in the amount of $60,000. Last year's award was not applicable. Funds will be used to fund up to 8 critical repairs in Fitchburg, serving approximately 30 residents. Critical Home Repair is exterior or interior work to alleviate critical health, life, and safety issues or code violations for homeowners in need. Participants must own their own home and have a verifiable need that falls within the scope and capabilities of the home. Must be primary principal residence, current on mortgage, property taxes, and insurance. Repairs must be necessary to function in the home, and homeowners must partner with Habitat.
Just before you get into your, no, you can sit down, but just before you get into your whatever summary you're gonna have, was this called something else before? I feel like we had a home repair thing in the past.
Different, it's, there was.
Okay, but it sounds very familiar. Oh, it's elder home repair.
Elder.
Okay, right. Okay. I'm sorry, it's just the summary rang a bell.
No,
That
and I've
was
been asked that
similar.
before
Yep.
too, yeah, so it's a
Okay.
little bit of a different program.
Excellent.
So 3.5 years ago, Habitat for Humanity, North Central Massachusetts, and I'm Carolyn Reed, and I'm the Executive Director of Habitat North Central Massachusetts. We decided to expand our reach by not only building new affordable homes, but maintaining the affordable housing stock we have in the region. So we added the Critical Home Repair Program and a Neighborhood Revitalization Program. And for that, we've worked closely with Liz and her crew and New View Communities. And this grant would allow us to expand our work in that area. Many of the homes, approximately 50% of the homes in Fitchburg, were built before 1940, so are an aging housing stock. So this program would allow us to reach at least 8 families and perform repairs on their homes. So the average cost of repair for materials costs us between $2,000 and $6,000. Many of the repairs that we've done so far have been roofing work, accessibility, adding ramps, updating entranceways. There are a lot of rotted entranceways that we've updated. And we've done some accessibility projects within homes as well.
Is this, the requested amount, is this for the actual construction cost? Is it salary, or is it?
It's a mixture of both. So it would allow us to pay, we have a site supervisor who's dedicated to critical home repair. In the early days, we were using our construction manager from the homes, and as we expanded the program, we've added a site supervisor just for critical home repair.
And what would be, again, as Paul had mentioned, like more or less like a, the requested amount is $60,000 is pretty substantial. Is there more like a minimum that would still enable the program to function?
So this amount would allow us to do around 8 critical home repairs. So with a lesser amount, we could plan to do a lesser number of repairs.
And how many does Habitat for Humanity serve in the Fitchburg area
So
currently?
our service area is 25 cities and towns in north central Mass. And so we have funding to do 8 to 12 critical home repairs outside of this grant in our 25 cities and towns. So this would allow us to double that and really focus on the Fitchburg neighborhoods that are in need.
Okay.
Excellent.
Any questions from the board? Okay. Question, comment? Yes, Ms. Blake?
At the housing programs, I've had an opportunity to work with Habitat for Humanity a few times over the years, and on smaller projects where we've provided funding, and the funding goes so much further with Habitat because they are using volunteer labor than it could otherwise, so they're able to make those dollars go a lot further and help more families. So in that respect, there really is a lot of bang for the buck there.
Okay, good.
I would imagine the prior speech from Mr. Kari, he would most likely know some situations that could need critical repairs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be great to work together again.
Council Boishman?
Question, is this funding just gonna be targeted to designated areas like, University of Ward 5, Ward 4, Lower Cleveland? Is it just gonna be targeted there, or is it gonna be throughout the whole city?
From my perspective, it'd be for throughout the city. So there have been projects where we've worked just north of Maine, and we've had some specific projects where we focused on north of Maine. But our goal with this grant is for it to be throughout the city.
So it'll be out the whole city, so it could be all the way out in West Pittsburgh, up there is St. Jude Boulevard, up to the Upper Shea Street area.
It could be anywhere. Well, the only criteria is that we serve homeowners that earn 30 to 60% of area median income. So it has to be a low-income homeowner without other funds to do the repair. So that could be anywhere, but it does have to be a low-income homeowner.
And out of curiosity, doesn't the whole city doesn't fall within the CDBG program area, right?
Most of the city, there are pockets that are above 51% AMI, but in this case, it would be household.
Oh, because
It
it's
would be
repair,
household
right?
by household,
Because it's
so-
repair, because they're servicing this servicing the income level.
Right.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next project is Idea Lab Build-Out, sponsored by Fitchburg State University, in the amount of $25,000, not applicable for last year's award. Funds will be used to support the build-out of the Idea Lab located at the historic theater block of Main Street. Partnership with New View Communities and City of Fitchburg, Fitchburg State University has developed a plan to jumpstart the local economy by sparking entrepreneurial activity in the heart of downtown Fitchburg.
Thank you. I think I know everyone, but I'm Jay Bry from the university. As you noted here, we've never asked before, and this particular year we thought was a little unique and different, as you just referenced, that this is really, we're applying as a partnership. We're applying as the city work that we're doing with them, the New View, and the university as part of the total renovation of the theater block. So it's under this rehabilitation preservation, but it's also part of the larger economic development piece that we're trying to do in the joint program with Reimagine North of Maine and with the rehabilitation of the entire theater. The Idea Lab, to talk briefly about it, so the Idea Lab is the second floor that we have already gone under renovation on. So we've committed, for the university, we've committed about $2.8 million at this point in time. We've got about a $200,000 to $300,000 gap, and that's what this is looking at. That second floor is going to include the Idea Center, which has the game design lab, which is dedicated to the student portion. Then there's this Idea Lab that will be open to the community. It's the piece we're partnering with New View on to offer some of the technical assistance that Ray was just talking about. It would also be a place that these individuals that they're working with can come and have a space to work and develop their plans, and as they grow their business, so forth, that it's kind of a co-working space on the second floor. And with the idea that as they grow, so forth, as we renovate then the lower level, that we'd be able to provide some lower discounted rental space that these businesses can grow into, and then hopefully as they mature more, can eventually move on to other rental spaces in the street. So it's a culmination of pieces. As I said, the idea here is that it's a partnership and that we're simply looking to try and fill that difference. If we're not able to do that at the moment, we will continue the renovation and build out, but we won't necessarily be able to open the Idea Lab as soon.
Right now, we're committed to having the initial build-out and the game design piece done by the end of our spring term. If we're successful with getting some of this funds and some of the other applications we've gone for, the Idea Lab would be up and running by late summer, early fall, and would start working with community members. This would also tie in that our faculty members and our students would be as resources to this project too. So.
And you could theoretically, I'm assuming by that time frame, you leverage these funds. You know they're coming, so you could front them because they wouldn't be coming until well after that time frame.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Yes, I would have the ability to do that, even though I just got my state budget and got zero, so I think we'll figure a way to do it.
I'm sure. It's a great idea. It's
Looking forward to it.
Yep.
Absolutely, yeah.
Any questions from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Yes?
I have a comment, and it has to do with the importance of communities, gateway cities, particularly in Massachusetts, as each of them has tended to sort of their rebirth and their revitalization. One by one, we've seen many examples of various types of entrepreneurial centers. And it's something that we clearly lack, but we've admired some of the small business launches and things that are taking place in these other communities. And for us to have a university is one feather in our cap. Now, for that university to take the next step and create that type of Idea Lab entrepreneurial center, not just inwardly focused for the university, but also outwardly focused for the community, that's going to really give us the type of oomph we need as we want to grow small businesses here in Fitchburg.
And I would add to that, kind of going to the previous piece with their revolving loan pieces too, that this is also going to drive other businesses down there, the students themselves. So the game design lab will actually have students being taught in that space. So we actually will be driving students down, be bringing students down there. The future plan also calls for the theater program to come down there. We eventually could see some of these Crocker Center classes that are going on also being offered down there. So over time, more and more students are coming down, which is then going to draw additional business,
Exactly.
so forth, and more activity on the street.
Yes, sir.
And not only the students coming downtown and patronizing businesses, but also staying in Fitchburg and launching businesses. And this is a critical step toward that.
I know many people coming from out of town for the theater performances, so.
Theater, and what Ray just pointed out, that's actually what convinced our president to initially do this. We took this project on for two reasons with the president. One, because of the theater need and a space large enough to accommodate our incoming class, which is now between 11 and 1,200, and we don't have any place on campus to host that. But it's this idea of this game lab, that our gaming program is only 3 years old, and we just exponentially, it keeps growing to the point we can't even find enough intern sites to host them all. So this is going to basically replicate that. And the idea is, what we kind of sold was that a student in this game design doing their senior project may actually come up with an idea that they like, hey, let me go next door to the business center and figure out how to turn this into a business, who then could go downstairs to a couple of spaces that we're going to hold for the university to actually do a business, get it started up at no cost, and then eventually keep moving down the road of a business. So it's kind of that idea of a kind of an incubator type space.
Great. Thank you.
Yep.
The last project in this category. Oh, yeah. Okay. Take a break for a moment.
We still have a quorum. We can keep going.
We have the Community Development Department Down Payment Assistance, sponsoring by Fitchburg in the amount of $80,000, providing matching funds to eligible Fitchburg homebuyers for down payment assistance, closing costs, education scholarships.
Nice to see you all this evening.
Thanks for having us here. Yeah, so we want to offer incentives to encourage homeownership in Fitchburg. We know there's lots of evidence that more homeownership is a stabilizing factor in neighborhoods. And so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail there, but we've had a program for a number of years called Buy It, Fix It as that incentive, and we've had a lot of trouble making that program work. It was a purchase repair program. For a lot of reasons, the types of homes that were being looked at just weren't working for that program because the amount of repair needed was just too much. It cost too much money. And so we didn't have enough for those. We had to say no to projects because of that. So we're trying a simpler method that would offer a more incentive to more people, just straightforward down payment assistance. Try to encourage not only our residents that live in Fitchburg, but folks from outside of Fitchburg that, you get great value for your home in Fitchburg, and there's a lot of opportunity out there. So we want to try to capture that while the market's hot. We expect that, this spring will be a really good market, and hopefully by the time the program gets going in the summer, we could. We do actually have a little bit of funding from the Buy It, Fix It program from I believe 3 years ago that we're looking to reprogram so we can hopefully capture the spring, but we don't think it will get us all the way through.
So is the HOOP program officially defunct? Because
exactly
that's
what
pretty
I-
much what this was.
It was.
HOOP became Buy It, Fix It.
But HOOP was exactly this. It was down payment assistance.
HOOP was a purchase rehab program.
Oh.
It was a partnership with local banks where the bank would give 80%, we'd give a 20%, there had to be rehab. And we'd get into all kinds of issues with the loan to value. When you added the cost of purchase and the cost of repair, we'd be way over the actual value.
Yeah, I was unaware it involved rehab.
It did. So this is much smaller dollars. We could help quite a few more people to get into a home. They have to take home buyer education, so we know that there's going to be an education component to it. They would come to us already bankable. We wouldn't have them filling out an application until we knew that they were qualified for mortgage. Yeah, it would be a much more straightforward program to manage and be able to be offered for
I guess
a more
I see this as just replicating already services provided by our community. Newview is also providing home buyer assistance.
home buyer education. There
yes.
is no down payment assistance in the city of Fitchburg.
Okay.
And we get calls all the
And
time.
I just put this question out there, whether or not, is this something that a city department should be providing? I'm just saying, home buyer assistance, and they're actually working as most like, a bank type of a thing. I'm just putting this out there because, it comes up and.
I understand where that question's coming from. I guess I will say, this is a fairly common practice with CDBG and home funds to offer down payment assistance, and as far as I know, other than some occasional mass housing, limited time programs, there isn't another entity that provides this. Banks don't typically provide down payment assistance. They're not giving away a lot of money.
Yeah, but okay.
And I guess one other thing I would add, and Paula, you're part of the Economic Development Strategic Planning Group, and similar to with the Economic Development Revolving Loan Fund, folks have talked about one of our key value adds in Fitchburg is we've got this affordable housing stock that we can convince people to move here because what's happening out east is unsustainable right now. And similar to the economic development situation, it's one thing to say, hey, you should move to Fitchburg, and give all the great reasons why, but it's another to be able to say, hey, you should move to Fitchburg, here are great reasons why, and here's some money too, to provide that added incentive to get people that might be thinking about surrounding community to, take a look here where previously they might not have.
I mean, I think I agree with Paul. I mean, obviously I work in the industry, so I think the majority of loans now we see, very seldom for a first-time home buyer, very seldom you're seeing someone put more than 5% down, but FHA, you can put 2.5% down. Mass housing loans, some are 100% financing. So you can buy property in Fitchburg now with really no money down. And when you don't, it's very, I think the concern I have is some of the people that might be serviced here are some people that might be saving $3,000 of theirs to use $3,000 of ours. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I don't see it as a necessity. I don't see it as solving a problem in the city. Now, the business loan pool is completely different, but, if someone has the credit qualifications to get a mortgage, to purchase a property, they need to be able to come up with as good money saving practice. They need to save up
Right.
$3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to buy a $140,000 house.
Right.
And I don't necessarily think that should come from a government loan pool.
Fair point. The one thing I would add is to not just think about the individual gain to a program like this, but the neighborhood gain when, because I would maybe agree in concept to that, but when you have neighborhoods where the homeownership rate is 30-35%, which it is the case in some of the neighborhoods south and north of the downtown in particular, that creates, a domino effect within the neighborhood as it relates to, improvements within people are willing to make investments in their home and quality of life improvements you can see that go along with home ownership, which is sort of what Liz was alluding to at the outset.
Would you be targeting more like receivership properties or something like that in order to get those like back on, rehabbed
Any
and back
property
on?
that needs quite an extensive repair would probably not be eligible for down payment assistance because it would need to meet some basic
But the
housing quality standards. But it could become leverage if there's like one sort of egregious issue in the house. Well, if you really want to sell this house, you're going to have to fix that seller so that the new buyer could buy it. So there's a little bit of leverage there, as far as an opportunity.
I'm certainly not
get a
saying there
couple
aren't benefits to the program. I think in the grand scheme of block grant funding, at least from my personal professional standpoint, I think it's the lowest on the totem pole as far as funding requests we've gotten to. That was my point. And I only tell you guys that because you guys are, you're in the office. It's not you personally. I'm not attacking you, but I don't know. I think I agree with Paula as far as, there's better ways to spend block grant funding. I don't know if that's it. I mean, if there's money left over, fine, but I don't know. Me personally, obviously not the board.
I guess I was, thinking of more like which houses to get back on the market and more targeting that type of a thing versus like, helping a home buyer buy the house. Is just how do we deal with this housing stock that we have of vacant and abandoned structures and getting them back, on where someone does have a receiver, under receivership, the receiver repairs them and puts them back on, then maybe find a buyer for that type of a thing, like versus it just being any house.
Right,
Sure.
Really, that kind of a,
It's a tough position to be in because the WHO program or Buy Fix It, if you said they were the same, that's too complicated, and I think this is too simplified, and I think it's like Paul said, somewhere in the middle somewhere. I don't know how you get there though, but anyway.
we are not the community, you're the community development department, so you know what the, the overall needs are, just that, from the perspectives type of a thing, just, could be there.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Coming right back up here, Brad.
We have clearance activities.
Coming right back up.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. We have the project demolition, one of our favorites.
Yeah.
Fitchburg Community Development Department, $250,000, last year, $243.91.
I think it's self-explanatory.
I
right?
think that's
Okay.
self-explanatory. I know there was like a list in the newspaper, the coveted
house.
list. It was in the newspaper.
Subject to change.
In this spring, I would imagine, I know, having done this many times, I know not to ask specifically, but this spring, I would imagine is going to be a very busy time for some demolition projects?
The article you alluded to is for this upcoming round. We're in the process right now and doing asbestos testing. We'll be going out to bid, and we expect that to be early spring when we're out to bid, and then we'll be awarding the contract. So I think you'll see demolition happening spring, early summer.
Great.
And so this is planning for like as soon as that's done, let's get going on the next round.
But this afternoon, actually, we were out in the field. One of the things you have to do is you're preparing specs for the bids for demo. You've got to go take pictures and you've got to go visit sites. And the two sites that I visited today underscore the complete critical nature of this program, because these buildings one day will fall down on their own, but I'd like to expedite the process, and I'd like to do it in a safe and secure way, and not create hazards, which they are currently. So
There's very few things that we do as a city where everyone that drives by says, wow, that looks so much better. I mean, it's instantaneous, right. the difference. So
How many demos do you get out of $250,000 normally? Roughly?
Yeah, about 7 buildings. Yeah.
Well, I think if I remember correctly, what happened the last cycle was it ended up being more because someone bidding got multiple projects and they could keep the
they could keep equipment there, or they could go from one project to the other, so you got more done out of the, whatever it was.
We always have a portfolio of our base bid and then alternates. So you're right, in the last round, I think we were able to take most, if not all, of the alternates because we just got such a good economy of scale. And then in this current round, there's also some city funding matching our CDBG funds to make, hopefully we'll get about a dozen properties.
And so
Great.
was the
I mean,
redevelopment
there's
authority
a-
last year as well.
The redevelopment authority in the previous round as well helped. So we actually did quite a bit, and we did some very significant sized and complex buildings, the old fire station and the alarm building, which would I think the brick was like this thick, in the alarm building. So that took a little extra work.
Right.
You mean there's 10 buildings that have to come down in Fitchburg? Wow.
Give or take a few.
We are making up for lost time, though, I can tell you that, and it's a good thing.
Any further questions from the board? Anybody else? All right.
Wonderful.
You can remain seated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Planning and Administration, Fitchburg Community Development Department for the CDBG administration in the amount of $182,000, which is probably up from $178,850.
It's an optimistic increase in case we can only spend 20% of whatever the entitlement is on administration. In case we get a little bit more than we did last year, we wanted to account for that because at the moment, CDBG is paying for a few full-time and parts of staff salaries, and then also those fringe and related services. And we don't quite make it 100% with the fringe and related services to pay. So if there was room to grow, it would end up going back to the city and those related costs. We're not proposing to add any staff.
And the category is pretty simple. It's 20% of whatever the entitlement amount is anyway, so.
Right.
Pretty straightforward.
Thank you. That concludes the proposals for this evening.
Wow.
I didn't see if people got the funding sheet, but did they get the 1.3 million in requests?
Can I say that in
Anyway.
a statement, maybe?
Actually, I'm surprised. The difference between total request amount and proposed entitlement
Wasn't
isn't as big as it
severe.
usually is.
No,
Last year, I think it was like 1.9 million versus, $1,970,000. But that being said,
So unless there's anything more at the hearing, then I will thank everyone for attending tonight's meeting.
make a motion to adjourn.
And a motion's been made to adjourn and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I gotta
Those
talk to you